Chapter 30:15. Ning Haixin and the green-clothed woman were both shocked. They saw a hunchbacked old man walk out from behind the pillar of the stone door. His hair was white, and his whole body exuded an aura of decay. Ning Haixin's pretty face instantly changed. This was one of the two generals by her father's side. His name was Zui, and he had just advanced into the ascending origin tier not long ago. Such an elite naturally couldn't coincidentally appear at this time, so there was only one possibility, and that was that he was specially monitoring her. Instantly, a strong sadness rose in her heart. Her father was really very passionate about this marriage. He had already predicted that she might run away, and even sent his most capable subordinate to monitor her. "Miss, please return," Zui said calmly, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Mr. Zua, I want to go down the mountain for a walk." Ning Haixin still wanted to resist. Sect Master said that Miss should cultivate in her room these few months, and don't do anything that would bring disgrace to the family, Zui said respectfully, but there was no respect at all. Ning Haixin bit her lip, and slowly turned around. She was only in the severing mundane tier, so how could she be a match for an ascending origin tier elite? She started walking, her tears already flowing uncontrollably, but she had not taken 2 steps when a person appeared in front of her eyes. That young man that she had saved from the lake. In an instant, she thought of what Ling Han had said. If she encountered trouble, she could ask him for help. She had an impulse to speak, but couldn't help but mock herself. Even she had to go and rescue him, so what ability did Ling Han have? Could he change her father's decision? Could he defeat Zui? So what use was there in speaking? Her steps gradually sped up, and when she could no longer see Ling Han, she felt slightly strange. Why did she see this person everywhere? Ling Han only watched as Ning Haixin left, and did not make a move. Everything was up to fate. If she believed him, he would naturally make a move. If she didn't believe him, why bother? However, the reason why Ling Han was interested in Ning Haixin was not only because she had saved him once, but also because this woman seemed to have an inexplicable affinity with him, which made him want to get to know her a little better. Speaking of which, when Ning Haixin returned to her room, her actions were strictly restricted. She was unable to leave her room and could only watch the days pass by as the wedding day drew closer and closer. During this period, her 2 older brothers came to visit once each, but they didn't care at all whether their sister married the right person or not. Instead, they coldly asked her to be a good wife and mother. In addition, she must be loyal to her maiden family, and if there were any benefits, she must remember these 2 older brothers. This made Ning Hai sad. In the eyes of her loved ones, she was just a tool that could bring them benefits. Several times, Ling Han's face flashed across Ning Haixin's mind, but she immediately shook her head, thinking that she was really desperate. How could this person help her? 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. The Clear Sky sect held a banquet and invited many important figures. After all, it was a marriage alliance with an immortal king, so the people who were invited all came to attend the banquet. Ning Hai's heart was like dead ashes. She numbly allowed people to dress her up and covered her head with a red veil. Then, with the help of her personal maid, she came to the auditorium. In order to show how grand it was, a wedding would be held here first, and then when they returned to the Lu clan, another would be held. From this point, it could be seen that the Lu clan indeed gave the Clear Sky sect a lot of face. Thus, Ning Daolan's face was full of smiles, and she seemed very happy. Her 2 sons were also dressed in wedding attire, and helped their father receive the guests. After joining hands with the immortal king family, their statuses would naturally rise as well. Meanwhile, Lu Yang sat lazily, and didn't receive the guests. As the son of her immortal king, he naturally thought highly of himself, and couldn't be bothered to deal with these low-class people. Of course, immortal King Anting wasn't present. He wouldn't lower himself to such a degree. "It's about time. Let's begin the ceremony," Ning Daolan said. The musician immediately began to work. Those who should play the instruments blew, those who should play the instruments played. The sounds of musical instruments rang out, and joyous music began to play. Ning Haixin was like a marionette, being controlled by others. She had completely lost her soul. Her heart was already dead. Wait! A voice suddenly rang out, extremely abrupt. Who? Everyone looked towards the door, and saw that it was a tall and sturdy man. The strange thing was that he actually carried a round shield on his back. Upon closer inspection, the round shield seemed to have grown from his body. What do you mean? Ning Daolan's second son, Ning Xiuwei, immediately jumped out and pointed at the man. What I mean is that I don't agree to this marriage, the man said loudly. What? In an instant, all the voices disappeared, and everyone stared at the man. Could it be that this guy was Ning Haixin's lover, and now that he knew that Ning Haixin was going to marry, he specially came to stop her? If that was the case, this guy was really infatuated. Who are you? What right do you have to say something like that? Ning Xiuwei asked. The other party was only in the dividing soul tier, so there was naturally no need for his father and brother to come out, or else they would lose face. He found it strange that there was actually someone among the guests who had a relationship with his little sister. He hadn't heard of him before. Otherwise, when they sent out the invitations, they would definitely pay attention. Moreover, his little sister had almost never left the Green Sky sect, so how could she possibly know a man from outside? The man grinned. I, Gui Ho, have only one goal in coming here today, and that is to stop this marriage. He pointed at Lu Yang and said, This brat is not worthy at all. Lu Yang immediately stood up, his face full of anger. Fuck, he actually dared to say that he was not worthy. If they hadn't taken a fancy to a certain ability of Ning Haixin's, why would he marry Ning Haixin? My dear son-in-law, don't take it to heart. Just let Xiuwei deal with this kind of boorish person, Ning Daolan said with a smile. On this day of great joy, they naturally couldn't let the groom act. Lu Yang nodded. I don't want to see this kind of person. He sat down again as if he was giving orders. Ning Xiuwei glanced at his father, and seeing him nod, he immediately waved his hand and said, Men, chase this audacious madman out. Yes, second young master. Immediately, 2 men stood out and pressed towards Gui Ho. These 2 were both in the dividing soul tier, and it was 2 against 1, so they were naturally confident. Gui Ho grinned, appearing very simple. He crooked his finger and said, Come. Scram. The 2 men attacked at the same time, attacking Gui Ho. However, Gui Ho merely turned around. Ping, ping, these 2 attacks simultaneously landed on the shield on his back, instantly shredding his clothes into pieces. However, a strange thing happened. His round shield was actually growing out of his body. Chapter 30:17. Lu Yang was about to explode in fury. He was the son of a celestial king, and marrying Ning Haixin was already giving him enough face. But now, not only did someone cause trouble, they even called him an ugly freak. Father-in-law, today is a joyous day for me and Haixin, he said calmly, suppressing his anger, but anyone could hear his displeasure. It was someone else's joyous day, so they naturally wouldn't allow anyone to cause trouble. Ning Daolan waved his hand at him, indicating that there was no rush and that he would settle everything. He looked at his daughter and asked, Haixin, what do you say? After a pause, he continued, Don't forget, you are my daughter. These words seemed to be a reminder, but also a threat. As expected, Ning Haixin couldn't help but tremble. In her heart, her father had always been the synonym of authority, possessing absolute authority. Subconsciously, she wanted to obey her father, but the moment she opened her mouth, her heart trembled. If she obeyed her father, then the rest of her life would be filled with darkness. She had always been her father's obedient daughter, and never dared to disobey anything, but in her life, she had the intention to resist for the first time. She slowly turned to Ning Daolan, and her legs weakened as she knelt down. I am grateful for father's many years of nurturing, she said, and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. She respectfully kowtowed 3 times. However, marriage is related to your daughter's lifelong happiness. I don't want to ruin my future just like that. So, please forgive me, father, and let me be willful for once. Ning Daolan's expression involuntarily darkened. He humphed and slammed the table heavily. Evil girl, if you dare to take 1 step out of this door today, you can forget about being my daughter forever. Ning Haixin's delicate body trembled, but she turned around resolutely, and walked towards the door. Step after step, her pace became faster and faster, as if her spirit had also undergone a transformation. Good, good, good. Ning Daolan's expression turned completely cold. He looked darkly at his daughter, and suddenly reached out to grab Ning Haixin. When an ascending origin tier made a move, how could a dividing soul tier cultivator block it, and a severing mundane tier cultivator block it? Gui Ho, on the other hand, was a little stubborn. He really wanted to attack, but the result was naturally like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He was sent flying by the terrifying force, and his turtle shell cracked. He was in an extremely sorry state. With a grab, Ning Haixin was pulled back. Evil girl. Ning Daolan coldly snorted. His expression was unsightly. She had actually caused such a farce in front of everyone's eyes, causing him to lose all face. He felt incomparably humiliated. All the guests laughed coldly. They were all forces in the vicinity, and the difference between them and the Green Sky sect was not that great. However, if the Ning clan were to climb up the tree that was the Lu clan, then they would stand out from the crowd. Who would dare to provoke a celestial king tier force? Now that something like this had happened at the wedding, even if the marriage didn't fall through, how would the Lu family view the Clear Sky sect in the future? Continue, said Ning Daolan. Under the suppression of a wave of energy, Gui Ho was unable to crawl back up. The sound of stringed instruments was heard again, and the atmosphere was festive. However, after such a disturbance, it was only on the surface. Everyone was waiting to watch a good show. Indeed, after a short while, they heard rumbling sounds coming from outside. One after another, grotesquely shaped people appeared. Some had gills, some revealed 2 giant crab pincers, and some had long prawn tails. With a single glance, it was clear that they were definitely the army of demonic beasts from the heavenly treasure lake. Old Gui, what happened to you? Seeing Gui Ho being suppressed on the ground, these water demons were both shocked and furious. They dared to touch someone from the heavenly treasure lake. Which bastard did this? A prawn man roared loudly. Everyone's expressions involuntarily became strange, and they all looked towards Ning Daolan. This was really like calling a monk bald in front of a monk. Ning Daolan's expression naturally became even more unsightly. His heart was boiling with fury. Originally, this was a joyous occasion for them to establish a connection with a celestial king, but now, all sorts of demons and ghosts had come to cause trouble. So what if he suppressed everyone? This matter was destined to become the laughingstock of the Green Sky sect, the humiliation of the Lu clan. He looked towards Ning Haixin. All of this was because of this evil girl. If this evil girl hadn't gotten along well with those water demons, how could there be today's farce? Boom, flames of fury rose all over his body. He had already decided that he was going to start a massacre. Since they had already fallen out, he would take this chance to completely deal with the demonic beasts in the heavenly treasure lake, and take over that treasured land for himself. You're courting death. Ning Daolan humphed coldly, and brazenly moved, pressing down towards the crowd of demonic beasts. Old geezer Ning, don't be impudent. 2 figures leaped up, heading towards Ning Daolan. Amidst a violent collision, Ning Daolan's attack was dispersed. They saw that the 2 who had moved were mermaids, and their bodies were covered densely with scales. They too were in the ascending origin tier, but were clearly inferior to Ning Daolan. After dispersing this attack, they both retreated, their faces incredibly red. Ascending origin tiers clashed, and this auditorium didn't have the protection of a powerful formation, so it instantly collapsed. Everyone hurriedly leaped out, the smiles on their faces even wider. They would really be able to watch a good show today. Ning Daolan's expression was indescribably ugly. He turned around and said, "Elders, move together and capture these freaks." Sect Master, that white snake? An elder said hesitantly. They naturally all wanted to take down the heavenly treasure lake, but because of that white snake, they hadn't moved all this while. It couldn't be helped. That white snake possessed a considerable true dragon bloodline, and its battle prowess far surpassed those of the same cultivation level. If they rashly started a battle, who knew what the result would be? Ning Daolan waved his hand. This time, it's the heavenly treasure lake that provoked this battle, So we have no choice but to agree. Everyone nodded. That's right, they hadn't initiated the provocation, and it was the Heavenly Treasure Lake that had broken the agreement first. The group of ascending origin tier elders all stepped out. There were 8 of them in total, and adding on Ning Daolan, his generals Heng and Ha, Zui and Jiang Feng, there were a total of 11 ascending origin tiers. Yet the Heavenly Treasure Lake didn't have so many ascending origin tiers. After all, their development time was limited, unlike the Blue Moon sect, which of those ascending origin tiers hadn't cultivated for hundreds of millions, or even billions of years. If they started a battle, the demonic beasts of the Heavenly Treasure Lake would definitely be defeated, and it would be very normal for them to be completely annihilated. Ning Haixin's body was restrained, yet she said, "Uncles, please don't make any more sacrifices for Haixin. It's not worth it for Haixin to accept her fate. Please return, uncles, and definitely don't start a battle. Little Ning, there isn't a single coward in our Heavenly Treasure Lake. Today, we definitely have to rescue you. Don't worry, our elites haven't moved out yet." The demonic beasts of the Heavenly Treasure Lake all said, not panicking. Their confidence naturally came from that white snake. She had long since cultivated to the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, and she possessed the true dragon bloodline, so her battle prowess could crush all those of the same cultivation level. End of this chapter. Chapter 30:18. Ling Han sat at the side, sipping his wine. He had no intention of making a move. His cultivation was too high. In his eyes, this kind of conflict was no different from a farce between children. Naturally, it was impossible for him to be moved. He wanted to see when Ning Haixin would think of him and ask him for help. Moreover, just how approachable is this woman? On the other side, the Blue Sky sect had already started the battle. All the ascending origin tier elites moved, launching attacks at the demonic beasts of the Heavenly Treasure Lake. All 11 of them, including Ning Daolan, emitted shocking killing intent. It was just as well. Before that white snake appeared, they would first kill off all the ascending origin tiers here. At that time, they would surround and attack the white snake. He did not believe that the 11 of them would not be able to take down a snake spirit. The battle unfolded, and true enough, the demonic beasts on the side of the Heavenly Treasure Lake were immediately at a disadvantage. Though they had many people, there were only 7 ascending origin tiers, so they were definitely at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. And in terms of individual strength, Ning Daolan, who was at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, was even more so superior to everyone else. Therefore, this was a battle with a great disparity in strength. It wouldn't be long before the winner was decided. All the guests were surprised. Could it be that the demons of the Heavenly Treasure Lake that had been troubling the Green Sky sect would be completely eliminated today? If that was the case, then it would be a joyous occasion for the Clear Sky sect. Who didn't know that the Heavenly Treasure Lake was rich in all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures? It was only because there were so many demons that the Clear Sky sect could only get a little every year. Humph! At that moment, a cold snort rang out. A white figure appeared, streaking across the sky like a heavenly dragon, exuding a shocking aura. Immediately, everyone stopped what they were doing. Everyone looked up and saw that it was a huge white snake that was tens of thousands of feet long. It had 2 small horns on its head and 4 legs under its abdomen. "Is this a true dragon?" someone said with a trembling voice. This pressure was too great, as if an immortal king had descended. "No, its horns are still small, and it only has 3 claws. It can only be called a flood dragon, not a true dragon. However, I'm not far from becoming a true dragon." The powerhouses of the Clear Sky sect knew that this was the white snake from the Heavenly Treasure Lake. This white snake was extremely powerful, possessing the bloodline of a true dragon. In the future, it had a high chance of becoming an immortal king. If not for her, the Heavenly Treasure Lake would have become the private property of the Clear Sky sect long ago. Now that this lord had appeared, he was emanating a boundless might. Although White Fairy, Ning Daolan, was determined to fall out with the demons of the Heavenly Treasure Lake, she was still shaken by the appearance of the white snake. He had once fought with the white snake and suffered a crushing defeat. If not for the white snake wholeheartedly cultivating and hoping for peace and quiet, the Clear Sky sect would not have been able to occupy the heavenly treasure lake. Now that she was facing the white snake again, Ning Daolan was immediately traumatized. The white snake's figure flashed and suddenly disappeared from the sky. She turned into a beautiful woman in a white dress. She had a big chest and round buttocks. Her waist was so small that it could only be held in one hand. It was truly a slender waist. She glanced at Ning Daolan and said, "I want to take your daughter away. Do you have any objections?" These words were truly domineering. Ning Daolan's momentum had long been suppressed. She instinctively wanted to shake her head, but she quickly suppressed the palpitation in her heart and said, "White Fairy, my daughter has long decided to be betrothed to Brother Lu. He is the son of immortal King N." He was using the immortal king to suppress the white snake. Although you are very powerful and can crush those of the same level, what can you do against an immortal king? The white snake was unmoved. She only waved at Ning Haixin. "Come." How could Ning Haixin come? She was bound by Ning Daolan. The white snake's action was actually done for Ning Daolan to see. It was completely forcing her to let go of her daughter. A mere little snake dares to be so arrogant. Lu Yang finally could not sit still. "Fuck, are you guys going to let me get a wife or not? Is it fun to jump out one after another? He is the son of the immortal king. Who dares to provoke the immortal king?" The white snake was decisive. Without a word of nonsense, she directly slapped at Lu Yang. Boom! In the midst of the surging force, the phantom of a large white snake appeared. Ning Daolan hurriedly acted. If something happened to Lu Yang here, how could he shirk the responsibility and explain it to immortal King Anning? Peng! The two forces collided, forming a storm that swept out in all directions. Instantly, everyone hurriedly fled, afraid that they would be affected. That could be a fatal disaster. Bang, 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 the force crushed over, and the originally dilapidated auditorium was instantly turned into ruins. Ning Daolan's face was flushed. This attack had indeed been neutralized by him, but under the backlash he felt as if his whole body was about to split open. He could not help but be shocked. After so many years, although his strength had improved greatly, and although the white snake had not been able to advance into the immortal king stage, the gap between the two of them had not shrunk. Instead, it had widened. It was only a single strike, but his whole body ached, and his bones felt like they were about to break. The white snake humphed and struck out again. Boom! The phantom of the large snake appeared again. Although Ning Daolan's whole body was in pain, he had no choice but to act and neutralize this attack for Lu Yang. Peng, peng, peng. The white snake struck out 10 times in succession, but all of them were neutralized by Ning Daolan. However, Ning Daolan's expression was extremely unsightly, and his aura was extremely chaotic. He was already powerless to attack again. Otherwise, his body might explode first. But the white snake struck out again without the slightest hesitation. She wanted Lu Yang's life with this palm strike. "Father-in-law, save me quickly!" Lu Yang cried out loudly. This palm strike came crashing down, and it was not something he could block at all. Ning Daolan wanted to act, but he was unable to do so at all. He could not possibly throw away his own life, right? Boom! The palm strike arrived. Lu Yang was about to die, but right at this moment, a palm suddenly reached out from nowhere and caught the white snake's palm strike. Alas! A light sigh sounded out, and someone said, "How did my son offend you, that you actually want to kill him like this?" Boundless multicolored light appeared in the horizon, and then a person walked over. His body was coiled with a strange light, and he was like the ruler of the heavens and earth. He was high and mighty, and all living beings had to prostrate before him. "Immortal King! Father!" Lu Yang called out loudly, filled with pleasant surprise. He had been a coward for half a day, and was either scolded as an ugly monster or attacked by others. They did not take him seriously at all, yet he could do nothing about it. Now it was all good. His father had appeared. Though Enteng was only a first heaven celestial king, in front of a celestial king, what was an ascending origin tier worth? The white snake finally showed a solemn expression. She had not thought that celestial king Enteng would actually come here personally. What to do now? Boom, Celestial King and Ting moved, grabbing out at the white snake. The white snake naturally would not allow herself to be captured without a fight, and immediately transformed into her original form. Her 30,000-meter-long body possessed endless power, and with a shake, she could cause tall mountains to collapse and the earth to sink. End of this chapter. Chapter 30:19. However, even if an ascending origin tier had all kinds of techniques, what use could they be in front of a celestial king? The palm that immortal King Anting struck out enlarged infinitely, and it was an entire 3 kilometers long. Under the pressure of the enormous palm, the white snake was instantly suppressed firmly onto the mountain, and it was completely unable to move. In front of Celestial King tier, ascending origin tiers would not be able to withstand a single blow. With just one palm, the powerful white snake had become a prisoner. This was an immortal king, high and mighty. One could only bow down and worship him. "Kill me! Come and kill me!" Lu Yang shouted. He had almost been killed by the white snake just now, which filled him with resentment. He glared at the white snake. "You look pretty good in your human form. I don't mind playing with you." These words were filled with humiliation. Not only was the white snake furious, but the other demonic beasts in the heavenly treasure lake also howled. Ning Hai's heart was filled with self-blame. If it wasn't to save her, how could the demons have ended up like this? In reality, even if White Snake and the others did not stand up for her, Immortal King and Ting would have wiped out all the demon beasts in the heavenly treasure lake. His goal was obviously for the heavenly treasures growing in the lake. Otherwise, why would he come all this way? They could totally sit at the Lu clan's residence. After all, there was a banquet to be held. Who's not convinced? Immortal King Anting asked. His voice was extremely gentle, yet it carried a supreme dignified aura that caused the hearts of everyone to feel as if a boulder was pressing down on them, and it was extremely uncomfortable. The monsters of Heavenly Treasures Lake wanted to speak, but under the might of the Celestial King, they could not open their mouths and could not make a sound. Mere little demonic beasts, yet you dare act impudently before this seat? Immortal King Anting said indifferently. He pointed out with a finger. Pa! A demonic beast was instantly blasted into pieces. Ignorant. He pointed again, and another demonic beast was blasted into a rain of blood. Stupid. With every sentence he spoke, he would point out with his finger, killing a demonic beast. No matter which demonic beast it was killed in a single strike. They were incomparably weak. The demons could finally speak, but they could only roar helplessly. They could not change their fates at all. You're not convinced? Immortal King Anting asked. Without waiting for anyone to reply, he continued to attack with his finger, killing the demons. So what if you're unconvinced? In front of absolute power, you're all just dregs. In just a few breaths of time, more than 30 demonic beasts had died in his hands. Enough, enough, enough. Ning Hai cried in his heart. Please let them go, I'll marry. Celestial King Anting acted as if he had not heard. He was a dignified celestial king, so how could he possibly make a deal with a mere severing mundane tier? In front of him, everyone could only obey his orders. How could they have the qualifications to bargain? Puff with a flick of his finger, another demonic beast turned into a rain of blood. Someone save me! Ning Haixin cried in his heart. No matter who it is, as long as it can save everyone, I'm willing to pay any price. She looked around blankly and saw an incredible person. The young man she had saved from the heavenly treasure lake was sitting in the ruins and drinking. Everything here was in ruins, but there was still a table in front of him and a chair under his butt. He was drinking leisurely, as if he was detached from the world. Such a strange scene should have shocked everyone, but no one seemed to be able to see him. No one looked at him. She suddenly thought of Ling Han's previous words and could not help but have a thought. Can you help me? Ning Haixin asked in Ling Han's direction. However, her throat was already hoarse from all the shouting. Her voice was very soft and could not be heard at all. Of course. Unexpectedly, that person seemed to have heard her. He nodded and spoke in a gentle voice. Ling Han stood up and shook his head slightly. He had been too naive. He had not planned to show himself. He walked slowly towards Ning Haixin and said, "How do you want me to help you?" Suddenly, they saw a young man walk out and speak to Ning Haixin. Everyone was surprised. Why was there someone who was not afraid of death? Did he not see that all the demons in the heavenly treasure lake were being slaughtered because of Ning Haixin? "Do you want to die?" The others did not recognize Ling Han, but when the demons in the heavenly treasure lake saw Ling Han appear, they all became excited. None of them had seen Ling Han's strength before, but because of Ling Han, they had gained intelligence and could vaguely sense Ling Han's vast power. In their hearts, Ling Han was a totem, a god. Their god only needed to come and save them. This made all of them extremely excited, and tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. "Who do you think you are? How dare you meddle in other people's business?" Ning Xiuwei jumped out. He was extremely angry. This was the Clear Sky sect. Why did everyone treat this place like a market? Ling Han glanced at him and casually pointed with a finger. "Pa!" Ning Xiuwei's body immediately exploded, turning into a rain of blood. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. "Fuck, just now, Celestial King Antang pointed with a finger and killed people like flies. Now, Ling Han also pointed with a finger and killed Ning Xiuwei. Was he provoking Celestial King Antang?" Celestial King Antang's eyes also widened slightly, and he looked towards Ling Han. "Bastard, bastard!" Ning Daolan was stunned at first, and then he flew into a rage. He cared about his two sons the most, and he had placed too much hope on them. Now that his two sons had died miserably at Ling Han's hands, how could he not be angry? "Return my second brother's life." Ning Xiuhong roared loudly, and then he pounced towards Ling Han. "Xiuhong!" Ning Daolan hurriedly attacked as well. Ling Han's strength was unfathomable, and he naturally did not wish for another son to die. Ling Han pressed with a finger. "Pooh!" Ning Xiuhong instantly turned into a rain of blood. Although Ning Daolan had attacked, could he block a celestial sovereign? Ning Daolan spat out a mouthful of blood. It was not because he was injured by Ling Han, but because he was angered. Two sons gone just like that. He was filled with hatred. "Evil girl, are you satisfied?" He looked at Ning Haixin and roared. Ning Haixin was speechless. This was his father. He pushed her into the pit of fire with his own hands, without a trace of pity, and two of her elder brothers were killed, but he was so sad. In comparison, how could she not be sadder? "Dao friend, how should I address you?" Immortal King Antang asked. He didn't attack because Ling Han completely disregarded Ning Daolan's attack. Though that was only the attack of an ascending origin tier elite, and he could similarly ignore it, there was only one possibility that he could do this. The other party was an immortal king. One should know that he was only at the first level of heaven. As long as Ling Han was a celestial king, he would be able to stand on equal footing with him. He had no choice but to be cautious. Ling Han acted as if he didn't see it and pressed his finger towards Ning Daolan again. Since Ning Haixin couldn't say how to help, then he would use his own method to help. "No!" Ning Daolan only had time to cry out once before her entire body transformed into a bloody mist. End of this chapter. Chapter 3021. Ling Han had carefully studied this new disciple of his. The fastest update. Why did Ning Haixin have such a strong affinity? While Ning Haixin was cultivating, Ling Han had been analyzing this disciple. With his abilities, it was impossible for Ning Haixin to discover anything strange. After so many years, he must have discovered something. However, this discovery was close to nothing. This was because he had discovered a small dot of light in the depths of Ning Haixin's consciousness. It was very inconspicuous, and he had only found it after searching for a long time. However, he could not detect what was in the depths of the dot of light. This dot of light was very fragile. If Ling Han forcibly opened it, it would immediately explode. Perhaps this would not hurt Ning Haixin, but it could be the key to her affinity. Ling Han naturally would not act rashly. More importantly, as Ning Haixin's cultivation level grew, this speck of light also grew, and Ling Han discovered that Ning Haixin's affinity with him was also increasing. Using himself as a reference, he found that Ning Haixin's influence on him was indeed increasing. Of course, this increase was negligible, and the influence on him was pitifully small. It was almost negligible. However, to be able to influence a celestial venerable with level 5 cultivation and level 7 battle prowess, what kind of concept was this? Ling Han was very curious, so he decided to properly nurture Ning Haixin. When the latter's cultivation level increased a little more, the spot of light would become even bigger, as if it had grown strong and healthy. Perhaps he would be able to pry into more secrets. 100,000 years had passed, and Ling Han believed that his doppelgangers should have already repaired the plane, so it was time for them to return. "Let's go," he said softly. "Yes, master." Ning Haixin bowed. After cultivating for so many years with Ling Han, she increasingly understood how unfathomable this master was. Speaking of which, although Ling Han had saved her from the abyss of suffering, he was also the enemy who killed her father and brother. However, she only had admiration and respect for Ling Han, and there was not a shred of hatred in her. Ling Han opened his hand and forcibly connected the space of the Sky Treasure Lake to this place, forming a spatial tunnel. The two of them crossed one step and arrived above the Sky Treasure Lake. "Who are you?" A demon immediately flew out. When it saw Ling Han and Ning Haixin, it became excited. It hurriedly knelt and kowtowed respectfully. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Get up." "Yes, my lord." That demonic beast said respectfully. It was the thick-backed tortoise, Guiho. If Ling Han wanted to retrieve his doppelganger, he would have to go to the Heavenly Treasures Lake, which was a node. This was because the plains and the void corresponded to one another. If he tore open the void at some other place, who knew where he would end up? He did not say anything and tore open the space. Instantly, void energy surged, causing the blue sky to change color. The void energy storm could reach the power of a 6th-step cultivator. This was only a middle-grade plane, and the strongest cultivator here was only equivalent to a dozen 4th-step cultivators. How could they withstand the void energy storm? However, there was a power that surpassed the rules in this world. The tear in the space was quickly recovering, preventing the energy storm from continuing to wreak havoc. "Come back," Ling Han said softly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, many figures flew out and pounced toward him, fusing into his body. Ling Han's power instantly skyrocketed. His aura also increased wildly. The entire Sky Treasure Lake boiled, and the water seemed to evaporate completely. Demon beasts flew out. When they saw Ling Han, they immediately knelt respectfully. Their souls trembled. This kind of power was too terrifying. After a while, all the clones returned. Ling Han closed his eyes and sensed. He could not help but smile. Very good. All the planes had been repaired. His battle prowess had returned to its peak. As long as he did not encounter frenzy, no one in this world could harm a hair on his head. "Haixin, is there anything you can't let go of?" Ling Han asked. "There's nothing I can't let go of," Ning Haixin immediately replied. Ling Han nodded. "Then I'll take you away." "My lord." Right at this moment, a white-robed woman flew over and knelt down 9 meters away from Ling Han. "I wish to follow my lord and serve you faithfully." This was White Snake. After 100,000 years, her cultivation had improved. She had reached level 2. Her progress was very shocking. This should be the effect of her bloodline. Otherwise, her talent in martial art would not be so strong. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "Fine. Follow Haixin. Protect her and give her some pointers." "Yes, master." White Snake was overjoyed. She hurriedly knelt in front of Ning Haixin. "Greetings, young master." "Aunt Bai." Ning Haixin was at a loss. Since she was young, Aunt Bai had doted on her. Now, she was kneeling in front of her and calling him young master. This terrified her. Ling Han waved his hand. "It's fine." He was one of the strongest celestial venerables in the world. Ning Haixin was his disciple. It was normal for a level 9 celestial king to be his servant, let alone a mere level 2 celestial king. Even celestial venerables had to be polite to her. Therefore, from now on, this lass should get used to it. "Yes, master," Ning Haixin said. All the demonic beasts looked at the White Snake enviously. Even though it was following Ling Han as a servant? No, it was following Ning Haixin as a servant. What kind of existence was Ling Han? As long as it could get even the slightest bit close to him, then its future would be limitless. Unfortunately, they did not have the guts to say that they wanted to follow Ling Han as a servant. Ling Han grabbed Ning Haixin and White Snake together. Then, he tore open the void and began his journey to the plain. He did not want to return to the foreign battlefield. Therefore, he spent a little more time. Half a month later, he tore open the void again and appeared in the Xuanma plain. Another 9 days later, he returned to his family. Ling Han. Everyone was overjoyed. This Ling Han would disappear for millions of years at the drop of a hat, and this always made them slightly worried. Ling Han asked about Ling Fifin's situation. Thankfully, this brat was very low-key and did not encounter any trouble. Moreover, he had successfully taken 3 steps forward and was currently still fighting in the foreign battlefield. Ling Han introduced Ning Haixin and White Snake to everyone. He did not mention Ning Haixin's special ability and only casually mentioned that he had taken in a disciple. Speaking of disciples, he felt a little guilty. In all these years, he had not properly guided his disciples. He began to walk around and gathered his disciples that were scattered in various places and even in various planes. Chen Ruijing, Yun Yong Wang, Kong Xiu Yuan, and Jiang Yufeng, these were the 4 disciples he had taken in his last life. There were also Ding Ping, Zhou Yao, Fu Tianxing, and Ning Haixin. These were the 4 disciples he had taken in his last life. Comparatively speaking, the martial art talent of his 4 disciples was too weak. At first, it was already difficult for them to reach the Genesis tier, but now that they had come to a super high-level plane, and with the addition of Ling Han's alchemical pills, their limits had also been pushed up considerably. Chapter 3022. The 4th disciple was now a unified first firmament immortal king. Ling Han did not raise them to the 9th firmament in one step. Instead, he made them cultivate step by step and comprehend the various aspects of life. Obtaining an ability that far exceeded one's mental state was actually not a good thing. It could lead to big problems. Ling Han wanted these disciples to cultivate their hearts. In the future, when he reached the 7th step and the plane power in his body reached large success, he might be able to help them break through the immortal king restraint and become an Empyrean. On the other hand, the strength of the 4 new disciples varied greatly. The one with the highest achievement was Fu Tianxing, who was already at step 4. He was only 1 level lower than Ling Han. Next was 9 Demon. He was a 9th firmament immortal king, but he was still far from becoming a heavenly lord. Perhaps he would never be able to do so. The 3rd was Ding Ping, who had just stepped into the 9th heaven. Similarly, it was extremely difficult for him to become a celestial venerable. The 4th was Ning Haixin. He was only a pitiful 2nd severance, and was still boundlessly far from becoming a celestial king, what more a heavenly venerable. Take your time. For example, Little Green, the Stone Man, the Rabbit, the Old Ginseng, and so on, they had all taken the Celestial King pill to advance into the Celestial King tier, which also cut off the possibility of them continuing to advance. Unless Ling Han reached the 7th step and formed his own plane, he might be able to change the rules and allow them to continue advancing. After giving some pointers to his disciples' cultivation, Ling Han began to act like a hands-off shopkeeper again, deducing the heavenly venerate symbol. His current plane had already reached the limit of his realm, so all he needed to do was push his realm forward, and the speed of his cultivation suddenly skyrocketed by many times. Thus, Ling Han had enough free time to deduce the Empyrean symbol. Time flew by. 1,000,000 years had passed, and Ling Han had deduced 3 sixth-rate symbols. He came out of seclusion and gave pointers to everyone's cultivation. Then he went to find Vale and invited him over. He carefully scanned Ning Haixin. Wally's eyes were glowing green as he scanned Ning Haixin's body back and forth. Ning Haixin and the White Snake were amazed. "Interesting," Wally said softly. Ling Han was surprised and said, "Strange, you actually know how to say interesting? Did you change your sex?" Wally had always been cold and calm. Even if he was smashed to pieces, he would still ask calmly and rationally, "Why? instead of fighting angrily. That was why Ling Han found it strange that Wally was muttering about something interesting. Vale glanced at him and said coldly, "Don't disturb my work." Well, this was a big shot. Ling Han had no choice but to stand at the side with his arms crossed. Vale finally stopped scanning. He raised his head and looked in front of him. His eyes shone again, but this time it was white and formed a human body. From the curves, it should be a woman. "Look here," Wally said, pointing at a corner of the woman's head. There was a spot there that was particularly bright. Ling Han nodded. This was Ning Haixin's brain. There was a light spot in her mind, and it should be the source of her secrets. Very interesting. Wally nodded and looked at Ling Han. "I've also seen this light spot in your mind." What? Ling Han's eyes couldn't help but focus. He was surprised, and there was an indescribable throbbing in his heart. "Look." Wally's eyes shone again and formed another human body. This was a man, and there was also a spot of light that was particularly bright on his head. "This is the holographic image I scanned and saved when I first saw you," Wally said. "Zoom in." Light flashed in Wally's eyes. Suddenly, the two human bodies disappeared and were replaced by a glowing object. This was the light spot in Ling Han's and Ning Haixin's minds. After magnifying it many times, it became something that could be seen with the naked eye. Ling Han compared it carefully, and the surprise on his face was even more obvious. It was true. Although the two light spots were somewhat different, they seemed to have an inexplicable connection. It was like the fruit on a tree, and there was an inseparable connection. What surprised Ling Han even more was that he had never found such a light spot in his body. He was a fifth-step celestial master. "Haixin, did you find such a light spot in your mind?" Ling Han asked Ning Haixin. Ning Haixin shook her head. "Never." "Then look again," Ling Han said. Ning Haixin used her divine sense to scan the mind, but soon she shook her head. "I didn't find anything." Ling Han stretched out his finger and pointed. Again. He also used his divine sense to guide Ning Haixin's divine sense. He had clearly touched the light spot, but Ning Haixin turned a blind eye to it. She couldn't see it at all. "Could it be that I can't find it?" Ling Han let Wally guide him, and he also found the light spot in his mind. At his level, if he didn't actively open his mind, who could explore it? But Wally had already said that the light spot was here, but Ling Han still couldn't see anything. Just as he guessed, the person who had the light spot couldn't see the light spot. Strange, it was too strange. A dignified fifth-step celestial venerable actually couldn't see what was in his body? For some reason, Ling Han suddenly thought of the previous world's will. Because a long, long time ago, even in his previous life, the world's will and madness had done something to him. Only the two of them possessed an unfathomable ability that even the current Ling Han was unable to detect, right? The world's will or madness. Although the world's will made it sound nice, Ling Han didn't believe it. This guy was too secretive. Considering Chong Yen and the others' strange behavior, Ling Han believed that the world's will must have a big secret, or even a big conspiracy. He had a headache. He hadn't even dealt with madness, and now another world's will had appeared. Although it was dead, could it really be trusted? He had to be on guard. Alarm bells rang in Ling Han's heart. If he had not coincidentally met Ning Haixin, taken her as his disciple on a whim, and even called Wall over, he was afraid that he would never have discovered that there was such a thing inside his body. "You already knew, why didn't you sue me?" Ling Han asked Wally. Wally rolled his eyes. "First, you didn't ask me. Second, I'm not obliged to answer you. Third, I don't know what this thing is either. If I told you without knowing the situation, it would go against my accuracy and precision." Ling Han was speechless. This guy was still speaking so eloquently. However, he was even more surprised by Wally's facial expression. Since when did this guy know how to roll his eyes? This was too human. Although Wally had always been in human form, Ling Han never felt that this guy was like a human. He was always expressionless and emotionless. This guy had taken the wrong medicine. Breaking Anti-Theft Chapter. Chapter 3023. Did you take the wrong medicine? Ling Han asked directly. You're the one who took the wrong medicine. Wally was disdainful. Ling Han was even more surprised. This guy actually knew how to bicker and express his disdain. What a strange thing. You evolved again? Ling Han asked. I've evolved the emotional system, Wally said with a straight face. All right. Ling Han was suddenly interested and said, why don't you talk to the big black dog? If Wally also learned the big black dog's despicable nature, then what would the result be with his strictness? Interesting, he was full of anticipation. After sending Wally away, Ling Han decided to focus on training Ning Haixin so that this disciple could grow up quickly. He led Ning Haixin on a journey, and they traveled through every mountain and river in the Xuanma Plain. The white snake also followed by their side, and she carefully took care of Ling Han's food and drink. Moreover, she played the role of Ning Haixin's teacher most of the time. To be honest, Ling Han was not good at teaching. Being strong and being good at teaching were two different things. The borders seemed to have returned to peace. Chong Yen and the others did not seem to have given up, but the battle at the front line was still tight. Frenzy was getting fiercer and fiercer, forcing the main battlefield to retreat. The main battlefield wasn't something Ling Han could intervene in yet. Previously, he'd only been there for a short while, and he'd almost been killed, and this battlefield had Xen Chihu and the other three great prodigies. Though the situation wasn't that optimistic, the situation was much better than the main battlefield. Therefore, Ling Han could not help much even if he went, unless he could reach step 7. He made good use of his time. While training his disciple, he was also cultivating, striving to reach the peak of step 5 and step 6 as soon as possible. If that was the case, his defense would probably be stronger. If he faced Frenzy again, he would not be as vulnerable as he was now. Frenzy, how strong was it? Ling Han believed that if Frenzy devoured a few more dimensions, its power might be comparable to a strike from the origin world. It could even shatter the soul of a step 7. Perhaps it was out of consideration for their own safety that Chong Yen and the others actively fought against Frenzy. It was because this was related to their lives. Soon, 300,000 years had passed. Ning Haixin had indeed improved, but he had only reached the 5th severance. On the other hand, the white snake had reached level 5 under Ling Han's guidance. In 300,000 years, she had advanced a total of 3 cultivation levels. This was very astonishing, but just look at Ning Haixin. Celestial Kings had advanced 3 cultivation levels, yet she had only advanced 3 minor levels in the Severing Mundane tier. In comparison, her cultivation speed was so slow that it was simply too horrible to look at. The white snake was speechless. Ning Haixin had at least 10 times the cultivation resources she had, but the treasures that could make an immortal king advance several steps only had this little effect. Fortunately, she loved Ning Haixin very much. Otherwise, she would definitely criticize Ling Han for accepting such a stupid disciple. After another 100,000 years, Ning Haixin advanced to the Dividing Soul realm. Logically speaking, a Severing Mundane tier would need 100,000 years to advance a single step, and a Dividing Soul would need at least 1 million years to advance a single step, but what surprised Ling Han was that Ning Haixin's cultivation speed had not slowed down. It seemed to be so slow that it could not be any slower, so it was just like that. Every step she took was very solid. Ling Han was already searching for the new plane that would be created from the collision of the two realms. When Ning Haixin advanced to level 9, he would plant it in her body. Of course, if Ning Haixin could be like him, and use the power of the plane to create a plane, then Ling Han would be willing to let her take this path. 1 million years, 2 million years, 3 million years, and Ning Haixin steadily advanced to the Celestial King tier. This surprised the White Snake because she had also spent more than 3 million years to become a Celestial King, and Ning Haixin had already caught up to her in terms of advancement. Ling Han had been paying attention to the dot of light in Ning Haixin's mind all this time. As her cultivation level continued to increase, this dot of light also slowly grew larger, and he could see it more clearly. There were layers of light patterns on it, constantly changing as if they were evolving something. However, though the light was not very dazzling, it was incredibly blurry. Ling Han decided to wait until Ning Haixin was a little stronger before exploring the secret of this light. That way, he could guarantee that he would not hurt her. Every 100,000 years, Ning Haixin would advance one level. There were also only 9 levels of Celestial King tier, so after only 800,000 years, Ning Haixin had reached the 9th heaven, and the white snake was still only the 7th heaven. This shocked her, and made her admire Ling Han's judgment even more. See, that was why Ning Haixin was a disciple, and she could only be a servant. When Ning Haixin advanced to the peak stage of the 9th heaven, Ling Han would take her to travel through the plains, preparing to walk his own path. If she could not walk, then he was already prepared, and would plant a new plane into her body. Coincidentally, Ling Shi and Fu Tianxing finally had a child, and gave birth to a little princess. Ling Han was overjoyed, and decided to postpone his trip. When he returned, he would immediately see this granddaughter of his. As expected, though the little girl had just been born, she already had the embryonic form of an exceptional beauty. In the future, she would definitely be a great enchantress who could bring disaster to nations and people. Though Ling Han's strength was close to invincible, and he was also his maternal grandfather, whether it was Ling Shi, Fu Tianxing, the empress, or even Ling Dongxing and his wife, they were all firmly opposed to Ling Han giving the little girl a name. It couldn't be helped. Looking at the birds and beasts by his side, what kind of names were Little Qing and Little Stone? Thus, Ling Han was mercilessly stripped of his right to name, and his protests were all ineffective. Could it be that he could still suppress his family one by one? In the end, the little girl was named Fu Siken, and her nickname was Chin Chin. Though Ling Han was displeased for a while, he was soon overjoyed, and hugged the little girl, unwilling to let go. Little Chin Chin inherited her parents' bloodline, and was a celestial king at birth. Her starting point was astonishingly high, and her path of cultivation was incredibly smooth. A mere 100 years later, she had reached the 9th heaven. This was too fast. In this regard, Ling Han did not feel happy, but rather felt that the little girl had not properly polished her foundation, and had not deeply pondered and experienced many cultivation levels, yet she had advanced so quickly. When she advanced into the celestial venerable tier, the sequelae would definitely show. Thus, Ling Han decided to bring little Chen Chen along. Ning Haixin wanted to break through to the pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, and she wanted to experience life and temper her heart. With Ling Han taking her along, Fu Tianxing and Ling Shi naturally had nothing to worry about. "Father, you cannot lead Chin Chin astray," Ling Shi warned. Ling Han rolled his eyes. This daughter of his had been so obedient in the past, but now, sigh. He set off with the 2 women, and began to travel through one dimension after another. To Ling Han's surprise, Ning Haixin very soon proved that she could not walk down Ling Han's old path, and nurture endless power of the dimension in her body. Strange. Ling Han had no choice, and could only plant a dimension that he had prepared long ago into his disciple's body. Chapter 30-25. The words of the world's will were unclear, hiding a deep secret. Ling Han had never truly believed it. Was it really the world's will, or was there such an existence? Ling Han was shocked. It claimed to be the world's will, so it really was the world's will. It only showed him a fragment of history. Could this prove its identity? In the name of the world's will, the words it said were naturally full of justice, making people believe it without a doubt. Wait, the world's will said that it modified me, giving me the ability to create a new plane and raise it to a super high level. Is this the ability it gave me, or did it release some of the life energy in my light? Life is the world's most powerful force, the cornerstone of the world. This kind of power can give me the ability to evolve a plane. It's normal to push a plane to a super high level. Life should have the ability to evolve. So, did it give me this ability, or did it just activate it? But no matter what, this world's will is not simple. I even suspect that it has not really disappeared. It's really chaotic. I haven't even dealt with frenzy, and now there's extinction, a so-called world's will. Ling Han tried to decipher the information in his sea of consciousness. If he could obtain the life code, then he would be able to create things out of nothing and evolve his plane into a real world. Wait, this is the 8th power? The 8th power was the opposition between yin and yang, life and death, chaos and order. It was essentially a kind of conflict. If Ling Han had the power of life, then it would correspond to the power of death. And the power of death was too simple. Which celestial venerable did not have the power to destroy all life? If he could master the eighth power, then he would truly have the ability to destroy frenzy. Ling Han kept trying to figure out the information in his body, but there was nothing he could do. The information was too fragmented and could not be deciphered at all. His heart skipped a beat. What did Ning Haixin get? He communicated with Ning Haixin, but she did not know what the information in his sea of consciousness was. Fortunately, she could show it to Ling Han. Both of them had that mysterious light, which gave them the possibility of communication. Ling Han obtained as much information as he could. After careful study, he discovered that the other party also possessed the life code. It was also fragmented and incomparably profound. Ling Han studied it carefully, trying to piece the information together, but it was no good. It was as if this was only a part of a huge puzzle, and too many parts were missing, so it was impossible to put together a complete picture. However, he still combined some of them, allowing him to gain layers of comprehension and sink into a deep meditative state. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, revealing a look of surprise. The surrounding environment had changed greatly. Damn, how many years has it been? Ling Han looked around. Ning Haixin had also disappeared. She probably saw that he was in seclusion, so she left first. Forget it, let's not talk about this for now. Ling Han stretched out his hand and spread it out. A stalk of grass immediately grew out of his palm. It grew rapidly, then bloomed, bore seeds and grew old. In the past, he could also do this, but he needed a seed. He only catalyzed the growth of this life. But it was different now. He was creating things out of thin air, like a creator. Frenzy could do this. It could transform into a plane and even create a sixth-step celestial venerable. In comparison, Ling Han was too weak. Ling Han could only create the most ordinary weeds, which were worthless. Not to mention a celestial venerable, he couldn't even create intelligent life forms. But the key was that he had taken the first step. This was an ability he had obtained from cracking some life code. Ling Han pondered. The life code I obtained isn't complete. Since Ning Haixin and I have appeared, there might be more people with such a light in their sea of consciousness. Perhaps I need to combine the life codes of 10 or even 100 people to truly grasp the ability to create things out of thin air. However, there are trillions of living beings in the world, and they are hidden in the depths of the sea of consciousness. If I explore them one by one, the speed of my search will not be able to keep up with the reproduction of life. In other words, even if I have endless life, this task will never be completed. And the person with the light doesn't know it. The sea of consciousness is extremely important, and it can't be opened for others to see. Even if I offer a sky-high reward, it will be useless. Sigh, this is really difficult. Forget it, I won't worry about this for now. I'll think about it when I get back. Ling Han returned to Anya City and reunited with everyone. Only then did he realize that he had been in seclusion for a full 3 billion years. No wonder the surrounding environment had changed so much. 3 billion years was enough for the sea to turn into mulberry fields. Things remained the same, but people had changed. Grandfather! A lively little girl called out to Ling Han in a crisp voice. Her appearance was really too beautiful. Ling Han was stunned. Little Chin Chin. I'm already an adult. I'm not little Chin Chin. The girl said innocently. Ling Han laughed. No matter how old you are, you're still my precious granddaughter. Little Chin Chin, little Chin Chin. The family reunited, and it was naturally very lively. The Ling family held a banquet to welcome Ling Han back. After this, Ling Han didn't plan on running around. There were only two places. One was Anya City, and the other was the extraterritorial battlefield. Everyone was responsible for the rise and fall of the world, especially when he was so powerful. 3 billion years had passed, and Ling Han had reached the peak of the 5th step. Without so many planes holding him back, his cultivation speed was naturally fast. One had to know how many celestial venerable symbols he had and how many combination talismans. As he prepared to break through to the 6th step, he was also deducing the celestial venerable symbols. To him, even the red medicine should be useless now. As for the plain core, it had to be a super high-grade one. But there was only one super high-grade plane in the world. Madness was one, but even thinking about it was extravagant. He couldn't blow up the Xuanma plane, right? Firstly, Ling Han couldn't do it. Secondly, even if he could, he wouldn't do it. So he could only rely on his own hard work. Perhaps it would take an epoch, or even longer. Ling Han wasn't sure. The closer he got to the end, the harder it would be to break through the realm barrier. So Ling Han planned to deduce the celestial venerable symbols with all his might. This was the key to communicating with the intrinsic particles. Maybe he could deduce more symbols that could help him advance to the sixth step? He went into seclusion, but he didn't stay for too long. After deducing a celestial venerable symbol, he would come out and reunite with the girls. After all, he didn't have many children, and the girls wanted to have a child with him. He had to work hard. 7 billion years had passed. Suddenly, shocking news spread. Chong Yen and the other 7-Step Supremes had left the extraterritorial battlefield. Breaking Anti-Theft Chapter. Chapter 3026. 5 7-Step Supreme Martial Artists had given up on their jobs. When Ling Han heard this news, his first reaction was, of course, to not believe it. The survival of this Yuan world was related to everyone. So what if he was strong enough to reach the 7th step? Without heaven and earth, so what if he could never die? Moreover, after frenzy devoured the entire Yuan world, it was very likely that he had the strength to kill a 7-step expert. The origin world of the previous generation had shattered the extinction realm into pieces and destroyed the soul of a 7th-step supreme being. Then, after devouring the Yuan world, madness would definitely have such an ability. How could 7 steps be safe? How could Chong Yen and the other 4 not have thought of this? They had actually, willfully, left the foreign battleground. Wasn't this just speeding up the pace of frenzy's advance? Could it be that after Feng Wuding's death, they thought that no one could control insanity, so they gave up? This possibility was too small. To be able to take 7 steps, which one of them didn't have a firm will. As long as they didn't truly die, they would fight to the end no matter how desperate they were. Besides, as long as the Yuan world is not destroyed, maybe a real savior will come out? It was too strange. Ling Han couldn't accept it. In that case, the 5 Supremes had other plans. In cahoots with madness. That didn't seem to be the case. What benefits would there be in cooperating with frenzy? Besides, if Chong Yen and the other 4 had really sided with frenzy, then they should be restraining Lin Luo and the others. Why did they only retreat from the extraterritorial battlefield? There was something strange about this place. Ling Han muttered to himself. The 5 Supremes withdrew from the foreign battlefield, but could they still stop their frantic advance? What was the situation in the main battlefield right now? If the main body of chaos couldn't stop it and only relied on the Xuanma plane to resist, then it would only take a few trillion years at most. It wouldn't even take a single epoch before it would fall. This would also mean the destruction of the origin world. Ling Han's first reaction was to head to the main battlefield to fight frenzy, but he immediately dispelled this impulse. No, he was only at the 5th step and didn't have a true undying body. Was he going to send himself to death on the main battlefield? No matter what, he had to advance 6 steps and further increase his defensive power. If he couldn't even receive a single attack from Shaoqin, it would be a joke. But how to advance to the 6th step as soon as possible? Since Chong Yen and the other 4 have returned, why not go and play with them? Previously, these 5 people had been finding trouble with him. Now, it should be time for him to take the initiative. Although he wasn't truly undying and indestructible, only frenzy could break through his defense. As for the others, even Step 7 could only stare at him fearlessly. Ling Han thought about it and decided to wait. If he charged over just like that, it would be a situation where neither of them could hurt the other. At most, it would be a battle of words. That would be meaningless. But when the 5 great Supremes returned, would they establish their own power? Would they act as a loner? Ling Han did not believe that Chong Yan's group of 5 would be so pure. If that was really the case, then he could only accept it and fight with them. Therefore, he sat down again and observed the situation. After all, the withdrawal of the 5 great supremes from the extraterritorial battlefield was just a rumor. It had yet to be confirmed. Ling Han continued to deduce the Empyrean symbol. Just like before, every time he deduced a new symbol, he would come out to walk around and communicate with the women. In the blink of an eye, 1,000,000 years had passed. It was no longer a rumor that the 5 great supremes had withdrawn from the extraterritorial battlefield. This caused a commotion among the upper echelons. Some forces had already started to pack up and leave. They were going to follow the passageway between the 2 worlds to the end of the Yuan world. Then, even if frenzy really swallowed the Yuan world one day, they would definitely be the last to die. Ling Han shook his head. Traveling between planes wasn't a joke. There were some places with energy storms that required the strength of a quasi-Empyrean to pass through. There were endless planes, and who knew how long it would take to reach the end? In any case, this was none of his business. He found out that Chong Yan's group of 5 had indeed established their own dojos and had actually taken in disciples. This puzzled Ling Han no matter how hard he thought about it. It wasn't like frenzy was destroyed and the world was at peace. Why were Chong Yan's group of 5 so carefree? Opening dojos and taking in disciples? Had their heads been kicked by a donkey? Ling Han pondered for a moment and decided to set off immediately. He would go to the dojos of those 5 to see what was going on. Secondly, he wanted to see what Chong Yan's group of 5 was up to. There was something fishy about this, a very big fishy thing. After thinking about it, he decided to delay it for another tens of thousands of years. This was because he had already derived 110 sixth-rate talismans, and he only needed 1 more to reach perfection. He continued his seclusion, communicating with heaven and earth, connecting with the void, and grasping the power of life. Although it was just a tiny bit, the speed at which he derived the Empyrean talismans was much faster. Ling Han's mind was constantly enlightened, and it was as if he had been reborn. Another 30,000 years passed, and he came out of seclusion. It was a great success. With a thought, the 111 sixth-rate talismans all revolved, instantly increasing his strength by 3,000 times. Ling Han entered the void and punched out. Hong, the void trembled, and the energy storm in front of him was instantly punched out a hole that was 10,000 miles long. After a long time, the energy storm stirred again, filling up this area. Chong Yan, Poyu, if the 5 of you don't grasp a few more first-rate talismans, I'm afraid you'll only be suppressed by me. Knowing that Ling Han was going to set off, everyone was excited and expressed that they wanted to play with him. Ling Han was speechless. How was he going to play? Was the dojo of one of the 5 paragons really that fun? However, it had really been a long time since he had brought everyone along. So be it. He brought everyone, stored them in the celestial visitor house, and then set off. There was no need to hurry along the way. Every time they arrived at a place, they would stop and tour. Thus, only after 17 years had passed did Ling Han finally arrive at the dojo of the Empyrean Poyu. This place was called the Poyu, but because it was the same title as the Empyrean Poyu, no one directly referred to the dojo by its name. Everyone simply referred to it as the dojo. Ling Han settled everyone down at a very far place. Once he started a battle with Poyu, who knew how much terrifying destruction would be caused. He brought along a few disciples, as well as Little Ching, the Stone Man, the Rabbit, the Old Ginseng, and the Large Black Dog. This lineup could be said to be quite strange. If it was just this few people, he would be able to send them all away before the battle with Poyu began. There was no need to worry about any problems. Ayo, Grandpa Dog is going to do something big. The Large Black Dog stood on his hind legs, his iron underwear reflecting a cold light as he twisted and turned. Grandpa Dog, please hug my thigh. The rabbit grabbed onto the Large Black Dog's thigh and used its head to rub the other's iron underwear. Go, go, go. Be careful that Grandpa Dog doesn't eat spicy rabbit heads. The Large Black Dog swung his behind. Grandpa Dog, do you want to pee? You can just pee on the ground. The Old Ginseng had a vulgar expression on his face. The Large Black Dog almost jumped up. Why did you want me to pee? Could it be that you wanted to plant it and absorb nutrients? Scram, Grandpa Dog doesn't pee. The old ginseng was astonished. Isn't it true that dogs can't stop peeing? That's because dogs can't stop eating shit. The stone man corrected. He was very naive, and even boasted to the large black dog, "Grandpa Dog, Big Rock is right, right?" Chapter on breaking and guarding cell phone reading. Chapter 3027. A bunch of scammers. The large black dog was so angry that he wanted to bite someone. Although he was two-faced and despicable, it seemed that this old ginseng and rabbit were not much inferior to him. "Fuck off." He kicked out and sent the stone man flying. Fortunately, he didn't use any force. Otherwise, the stone man would definitely be a stone now. "Grandpa Dog, you're so smart. That kick was so cool." The rabbit hugged one of the large black dog's legs and rubbed it. "Go away, don't dirty Grandpa Dog. Let little ginseng hug him." The old ginseng squeezed over. "Fuck off. Fuck off." These two scammers disliked each other, pushing and shoving each other. It was very lively. The stone man had already run back. He had been bullied by the large black dog, so he could only lie at Ling Han's feet and act like a puppy. Ling Han shook his head. These three were really scammers. Little Qing was still the best. She spread her wings and soared in the sky, and didn't want to be associated with these three scammers. He, Chen Ruijing, Jiang Yefeng, and the other disciples all laughed. Of his 8 disciples, only Fu Tianxing wasn't here. Because his cultivation level was too high, Ling Han didn't want him to scare people. At this moment, they were finally blocked by someone. "State your name." A celestial king appeared in front of them. Although there was only a streak of light wrapped around his body, a celestial king was a celestial king. He could be called an overlord anywhere. Now, a celestial king was actually a guard. How extravagant! On second thought, this was the training ground of a 7th-step supremacy. Naturally, it wasn't strange for a celestial king to be a guard. "We're here to challenge you." The rabbit immediately jumped out. It really did jump out, and its ears were still bouncing. What was going on? The celestial king was stunned. A rabbit had actually run out to challenge him? Ha! He laughed loudly. This was the training ground of a 7th-step supremacy, and a mere first heaven actually dared to challenge him? What a joke! This wasn't just overestimating one's capabilities, it was stupid. "What are you laughing at?" The old ginseng charged over, his roots waving as he spat at the celestial king. "This is Grandpa Ginseng's precious liquid. Good son, I'll reward you." Ling Han was speechless. Even though he had become a celestial king, the old ginseng was still so immoral. Forget about the fact that this was just spit. Even if it really was precious liquid, there was no way that immortal king would accept it. This wasn't bestowed, but rather spat out, carrying powerful humiliation. That immortal king hurriedly dodged. Facing such an attack, he truly couldn't even block it. Seeing this, the old ginseng naturally became more and more delighted. Poo, pew, pew. His saliva continued to spit out, transforming into a torrential downpour that sprayed toward that celestial king. That immortal king hurriedly activated a defensive light shield, blocking all the saliva. However, the old ginseng's saliva was not as simple as being disgusting. Rather, it was extremely corrosive and rapidly corroded the light shield. This caused the celestial king's expression to turn pale with fright. He hadn't expected that the old ginseng wasn't just immoral. Instead, he was actually quite capable. He had no choice but to be cautious, and he drew out boundless regulations to clash with the old ginseng. The old ginseng howled loudly and continued to unleash attacks. He was completely unrestrained and would use all sorts of underhanded moves. His saliva spat up 3 directions, while his roots attacked 3 directions below. He was truly wretched and immoral. Battling with this kind of existence was undoubtedly a very exhausting matter. That celestial king very quickly roared in rage, and the veins on his face bulged. "You're so ugly, yet you still come out to make a spectacle of yourself. Don't you find it embarrassing? Even Grandpa Ginseng feels embarrassed for your mother." The old ginseng was deeply influenced by the large black dog. Battles weren't just a battle of strength, and he naturally couldn't neglect his verbal skills either. Let Grandpa Ginseng use my precious liquid to wash your face and beautify your face. That celestial king was so angry that he was about to spit blood. He was enraged, and he grabbed the regulations of heaven and earth, combining them with his own power to form a heavenly dagger that slashed toward the old Ginseng. You unfilial son, you actually dare to attack Grandpa Ginseng. The old Ginseng jumped up and down. Grandpa Ginseng has given you plastic surgery, so I'm like a second parent to you. You unfilial son, you actually dare to kill your own kin? How disgraceful. Grandpa Ginseng doesn't recognize you as his son. That celestial king was so furious that his eyes were almost spitting fire. He roared loudly, and his attacks were as quick as lightning. However, in his rage, though his attacks were domineering, they lost their flexibility. If the old Ginseng's cultivation level was lower than his, then he would be able to rely on these thunderous attacks to obtain victory. However, the strength of the two of them was about the same, so this kind of attack couldn't give him the upper hand. Instead, if he was too strong, he would easily break, and he would reveal too many openings. The old Ginseng had said so much because he wanted to disturb his opponent and force him to reveal openings. Now, he naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. He grabbed hold of his opponent's weak point and launched a barrage of attacks. Shio shio shio. Numerous figures leaped out from the dojo and landed. All of them were celestial kings. However, they didn't attack. Instead, they crossed their arms and watched coldly from the side. If they couldn't even defeat trash like the old Ginseng, how could they still have the face to remain in the mountain-crushing dojo? Of course, if that celestial king was defeated, the others would also attack and defeat the old Ginseng, and then kill him to uphold the name of the dojo. This was a holy land, and no one could blaspheme the dignity of the mountain-crushing dojo. After another several hundred moves, that celestial king was finally defeated. A blow landed on his chest, and he continuously vomited blood. Sigh, being invincible is so lonely, the old Ginseng said in an intense show of pretentiousness. Right now, he was very much like a human. A few of his roots were tied together, forming a pair of legs and arms. Now, his two arms were behind his back, and he shook his head. However, no one was echoing him, and this made him feel incredibly awkward. Hey, why isn't anyone clapping? He called out. Clap, clap, clap. In any case, the large black dog and rabbit were just here to watch the show, and they didn't mind the matter getting out of hand. The old Ginseng became smug again. He puffed out his chest and belly, and there was a proud expression on his face. Scram, 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 you can't even withstand a single blow. He waved his hand at that celestial king. That celestial king's expression was livid. Just as he was about to charge forward and fight again, he was sent flying with a kick. This was a third heaven celestial king. He coldly said, "How humiliating. You can't even defeat a mutant." What? Brat, is your mouth growing on your anus? The old Ginseng stomped his foot. Do you know how to speak human language? Who's a freak? You're the freak. Your face is full of freaks. The third firmament immortal king was taken aback. Then, a look of rage appeared on his face. Fuck, he only said one sentence, and it was also the truth. You immortal medicine took form, pa. You didn't take form either, only having a bit of a human form. If you aren't a different species, then what are you? What a despicable mouth, he said coldly. Then, he struck out with his palm towards the old Ginseng. The old Ginseng could not withstand a third firmament immortal monarch's attack. Save me! My son is trying to kill me. The old Ginseng hurriedly broke into a run, running towards Ling Han. The third firmament immortal king was infuriated. Lowly Ginseng, did you soak your mouth in a cesspit? He roared furiously, and condensed regulations into a sword, which he thrust toward the old Ginseng. End of this chapter. Chapter 3029. The fourth firmament immortal king's face turned livid. Only a blind man would dare to impersonate an old Ginseng. However, his surname was indeed Dang and his given name was Shin. In front of everyone, how could he change his surname and name? How could he lose face like this? Unfortunately, he actually collided with this cheap Ginseng. Don't fall into my hands. Otherwise, I'll definitely stew you, he said viciously to the old ginseng. The old ginseng stretched out a few of his roots and made a disdainful expression. Eat shit. Ling Han was also speechless. At his level, there was actually such a farce. But it didn't matter. They were here to cause trouble anyway, so they could do whatever they wanted. He turned to the large black dog and said, "Another one has been led astray by you. Pay." The large black dog jumped up, pointed at Ling Han and said, "Little Han, don't slander Grandpa Dog. That old ginseng is clearly a swindler, and he's incomparably evil. Does he still need Lord Dog to lead him astray?" Ling Han sighed. Even the large black dog was busy distancing himself from the old ginseng. It was clear to what extent the old ginseng was angering both men and gods. Dang Shen made his move. He was filled with rage, and he wanted to defeat Kong Xiao Yuan. Then, he would drag the old ginseng out and use the cruelest torture methods in the world to torture him. Finally, he would make soup out of him and drink it. "Brother Dang, put in a bit more effort. You must obtain this lowly ginseng. For the glory of our dojo." "Fuck, this ginseng demon is too despicable." The celestial kings in the dojo were all enraged. The despicable old ginseng had successfully provoked everyone's fury. There was no lack of ninth heaven celestial kings here. All of them released their auras, causing the old ginseng's skin to feel as if it was being cut by blades. It was afraid, and it hurriedly retreated. Then, it grabbed onto one of the large black dog's legs. Only then did it become arrogant again. "What are you shouting for? If you have the guts, then fight with my Grandpa Dog." The large black dog hurriedly flicked his leg. "Scram, scram. Don't cling onto Grandpa Dog's noble thigh." "No, Lord Dog, your thighs are too thick. Let me hug you for a while longer," said the old ginseng shamelessly. This caused everyone to be dumbfounded. How could there be such a despicable existence? This was simply too despicable. Dang Can launched a flurry of attacks at Kong Xiao Yuan. Kong Xiao Yuan also walked the path of alchemy. He flicked his index finger, and a crimson pill shot forth. A violent power shook the pill, and it immediately exploded. Of course, Dang Can would not repeat the same mistake. He was already prepared, so he immediately flew up and avoided the explosion zone. However, the pill did not create a black hole. Instead, it created a huge swamp, which immediately slowed Dang Shen down. The laws had turned into visible threads that tied up the Dang Shen. Kong Xiao Yuan's attack did not affect him in the slightest, so he naturally had the upper hand. Ling Han nodded. Although his two disciples did not have much talent in martial art, they were quite accomplished in alchemy. There was no need to talk about Qin Ruijing's black hole pill. Kong Xiao Yuan's mud pill was also very useful. Both of them had integrated regulations into their pills and walked their own unique paths. Of course, both of them had asked for guidance from Ling Han, and they had received crucial guidance. However, this was still praiseworthy. Everyone could clearly see that Kong Xiao Yuan's battle prowess was not very high. In fact, he could only be ranked below average among those at the same cultivation level. However, who asked Dang Can to be so weak? After withstanding a few dozen blows, Dang Can was completely defeated. Then he was pointed at by the old ginseng to show off. The old ginseng wore an arrogant expression. "Bring it on. If Grandpa Ginseng says I'm afraid, then I'll be your father. I won't be your grandfather anymore." Everyone was enraged by his words, and they wanted nothing more than to rush up and hack the old ginseng into pieces. "What? You're not convinced? So what?" The old ginseng became more and more arrogant. He pointed at everyone and said, "It's not that Grandpa Ginseng is looking down on you, but you're all just a bunch of trash." Boom. The celestial kings were all enraged, and their anger became tangible. The large black dog smirked and suddenly kicked out. But the old ginseng was flung away by him, and he landed in front of the celestial kings. The old ginseng crawled to his feet, and when he raised his head, he saw the celestial king's furious expressions. He instantly squeezed out a flattering smile, and suddenly jumped up. He pointed at Ling Han and the others. "Bark! You scum, you actually dared to threaten Grandpa Ginseng and speak ill of these lords behind me. Now that I've obtained my freedom, I won't have to be threatened by you anymore. The old ginseng turned around again and bowed to the celestial kings. Sirs, little ginseng pays his respects to you. Everyone was dumbfounded. How could there be such a shameless guy? I'm going to kill him. A celestial king couldn't help but throw a punch at the old ginseng. Save me! The old ginseng hurriedly tunneled into the ground. Before he had obtained his power, he was already skilled at escaping. Now that he had advanced to the celestial king tier, his battle prowess was still not that great, and he was at the bottom of the first heaven. However, his ability to escape had improved greatly, and he was extraordinary. He burrowed into the ground, and when he came out again, he was already beside Ling Han. Come at me! The old ginseng started to jump again. Bastard! At least a dozen celestial kings dashed out at the same time. I'll do it! Yun Yong Wang jumped out and swept out a palm at those celestial kings. The power of his palm was incredibly thick, and a single strike sent those celestial kings flying. So powerful! A celestial king exclaimed in shock. They were all at the fifth heaven, but Yun Yong Wang was unbelievably powerful. Among the dozen or so celestial kings, at least 4 were also at the fifth heaven. However, even though so many of them had joined forces, they were still no match for him. This group of people was very powerful, and all of them possessed the power to crush those at the same cultivation level. No wonder they dared to come and challenge the celestial king. However, so what if they were powerful? This was the Paragon Dao ground. If they really provoked the celestial venerable Sundermount, no matter how many people came, and no matter who they were, they would all die. Yun Yong Wang was filled with heroic spirit, and he waved his hand. I am Yun Yong Wang, please enlighten me. He had cultivated the 9 transformations Heaven Scroll and the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and he had mastered both offense and defense. Thus, he was naturally extremely powerful. In the past, Ling Han had been unable to teach them the celestial venerable tier treasure technique. Now, however, it was a piece of cake. Added with the fact that so much time had passed, disciples like Yun Yong Wang and Jiang Yufeng who were proficient in martial art had naturally mastered it. He roared and took the initiative to attack. A faint golden light radiated from his body, and it was as if he had an invincible body. Moreover, he channeled the 9 transformations Heaven Scroll, causing his power to explosively increase by over 100 times. This power had far surpassed the level of the 5th heaven. Numerous figures flew into the air. None of them were a match for him, and even celestial kings at the same cultivation level could only be sent flying by a single strike from him. However, after a few breaths, there was no one left standing in front of Yun Yong Wang. He clasped his hands in greeting and said, "Thank you for letting me win." A 7th heaven celestial king walked out and said, "At least you have some ability. No wonder you dared to come and create trouble. However, you mustn't forget that this is Lord Sundermount's Dao ground. Then let me, Lan Ruoping, deal with you." G-Cup female idol takes first place in AV video. Please follow the WeChat public account IEI222. Chapter 30:30. Jiang Yufeng chuckled, pointed at himself, and said, "It's my turn now, right?" He was extremely flashy and applauded. Everyone, let's welcome the most handsome man in history with a warm round of applause." You don't seem very happy." Jiang Yufeng looked at Lan Ruoping. "Sigh, seeing such a handsome man, you actually don't feel the slightest bit stunned." "How disappointing." Lan Ruoping looked at him coldly and said, "Cut the crap, make your move." He was very conceited. He clearly knew that Yun Yong Wang and the others had the ability to crush those of the same cultivation level, but he was still full of confidence in himself. "Sigh, you're really crude," Jiang Yufeng said with a smile. He shook his head and said, "How about we sit down, drink some tea, and chat?" Lan Ruoping was startled. He didn't think that not only the ginseng demon and dog demon had such cheap mouths, but this human was also like this. He charged over. "Die." Hong, he drew out an ancient mirror that hovered above his head, spitting out a terrifying light. Jiang Yufeng was unafraid and charged over. Peng, peng, peng. The two of them exchanged blows, both using their full strength. Lan Ruoping was so conceited, but he indeed had real talent. His battle prowess was incredibly shocking, possibly reaching the height of 8th heaven. This was because his talent in martial art was too high, allowing his battle prowess to almost cross over a heaven. Jiang Yufeng was different. At first, he might not even reach the heavenly body tier, but now he had reached 7th heaven. His potential had long since been used up, and it was only because of Ling Han that he was able to break through his limits again and again. But he cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll and the 9 Transformations Heaven Scroll, so whether it was battle prowess or defense, he was far superior to those of the same cultivation level. Thus, his battle prowess was completely not inferior to Lan Ruoping's. However, Jiang Yufeng still had the advantage in defense. His body was like indestructible Vajra, and was not something that Lan Ruoping could break through. This allowed Jiang Yufeng to stand in an invincible position. He could go all out, and only needed to focus on attacking. The more Lan Ruoping fought, the more aggrieved he became. He was clearly more outstanding than Jiang Yufeng, but because the latter had cultivated some kind of secret technique, his battle prowess was magnified by 100 times, enough to contend with him. Furthermore, under the protection of another secret technique, Jiang Yufeng's defense was close to invincible. Even after a dozen or so strikes, he could only leave a small wound on his opponent's body. How could he seriously injure his opponent like this? Such a battle was too unfair. He was filled with hatred. The other party definitely had a formidable master to receive such a wondrous technique. Therefore, he was very unwilling. But so what? No matter how unwilling he was, he wouldn't be able to increase his combat strength. He would only be affected by his emotions, causing his combat strength to weaken. The scales of victory continued to tilt in Jiang Yufeng's favor. It was only a matter of time before Lan Ruoping was defeated. Indeed, after another few hundred moves, Lan Ruoping was struck by Jiang Yufeng's fist. He vomited blood repeatedly and was defeated. Previously, he had made such a bold statement, but now he had been defeated by Jiang Yufeng at the same cultivation level. Naturally, he could not bring himself to lose face, so he immediately turned and left, not returning to the training hall. She just didn't know if he was just putting on an act or if he would never come back. Jiang Yufeng giggled and bowed to the crowd. "Thank you for letting me win, thank you for letting me win. As expected, I'm still the most handsome. I make others feel ashamed of their inferiority and leave in shame. You guys are really bold," a 9th Firmament Celestial King said. He looked extremely young, and his flame of life was at most tens of billions of years old. Yet, he had already entered the 9th Firmament. His progress could be said to be flying. You must have gone mad from wanting to become famous. You even dare to cause trouble at Heavenly Venerable Poyu's training hall. The young 9th Firmament Celestial King strode out. Boom. He clearly didn't use any power, but when he stomped down, the heavens and earth shook. It was as though the heavens were afraid of him. Ding Ping walked out and asked indifferently, "Who are you?" "I'm Shi Yuan," said the 9th Firmament Celestial King. "My father is Heavenly Venerable Flawless." Heavenly Venerable Flawless. Ding Ping immediately recalled that Heavenly Venerable Flawless was a 3rd step expert. It was no wonder he could nurture such a young, 9th Firmament Celestial King. However, it was obvious that Shi Yuan couldn't become a Heavenly Venerable. Hence, he had come here in hopes that a 7th step supremacy could help him take this crucial step. Only after becoming a Heavenly Venerable could one truly be ranked among the strongest in the world. You guys should also be descendants of Heavenly Venerables, right? Shi Yuan continued. His words instantly caused the nearby Celestial Kings to exclaim in unison. They were clearly very shocked. Most of the people here didn't have a Heavenly Venerable background. Hence, even a 1st step expert was someone they had to look up to. They were merely apprentices of the training hall, and not Heavenly Venerable Poyu's personal disciples. How could they dare to offend a Heavenly Venerable? "So what if I am and so what if I'm not?" Ding Ping asked indifferently. Haha, actually it doesn't matter. Shi Yuan was still very arrogant. It's just that I saw that you guys seem to have grasped a heavenly venerable technique, so I wanted to confirm it. He clenched his fists and lightly shook them. Instantly, dazzling light surged out. In front of me, all your backgrounds are useless, he said proudly. Then let's fight. Ding Ping was also burning with fighting spirit. In front of his master, he couldn't lose his morale no matter what. Boom. Shi Yuan charged over. He punched out, and the supreme laws wrapped around his fist. Below the level of laws, it was already peerless. Ding Ping wasn't afraid, and he also punched out. Bang bang bang, the two of them kept exchanging blows. They were both very confident in their own strength and wanted to defeat each other head-on. Master, senior brother Ding won't lose, right? Zhu Yao said from the side. The current battle situation was extremely intense, and he could not see who had the upper hand. Don't worry. Little Ping Zi was born with brute strength, and he's even at the same cultivation level as him. Moreover, he's cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, so he's most suited for head-on battles like this. What's Yuan now? He's just trying to show off. Lord Dog guarantees you that he won't be able to last more than 100 moves. Zhu Yao nodded. The large black dog was a second-step celestial venerable, so how could he possibly be mistaken? Sure enough, in less than 80 moves, Shi Yuan retreated in a sorry state, her face flushed red. His arms hung down in a strange shape because all the bones in his arms had been shattered. However, he had wanted to save face and forcefully condensed his broken bones with origin energy, thinking that Ding Ping was the same as him. Now, he couldn't hold on any longer and was immediately defeated. Ding Ping was very polite. He cupped his fists and said, I admit it. The old ginseng jumped out and mocked. Is there anyone who can fight? Is there anyone who can fight? The celestial kings didn't say anything. Ding Ping was far too powerful, and those below the ninth heaven were naturally no match for him. Moreover, who could guarantee that they would be a match for elites at the ninth heaven? The old ginseng laughed loudly. What bullshit, celestial venerable. You've taught a bunch of useless trash. Hurry up and tear down your reputation. G-Cup female idol takes first place in her first AV shoot. Please follow the WeChat public account Amy222 to watch online. Chapter 30-31. As the saying went, don't hit someone in the face. This signboard was the face of a training ground. If the signboard was smashed, would the drenched mountain training ground still be able to operate before they got their revenge? No one would be able to bring themselves to do that. Thus, the celestial kings were all enraged. Chen Ruijing and the others all looked towards Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and said, tear it down. There was no need to be polite towards the heavenly venerable drenched mountain. They could slap him in the face as much as they wanted, and the more displeased he was, the better. Yes, master. The disciples all answered solemnly. They moved out and flew towards the training ground. Stop. The celestial kings all roared. If they really allowed someone to smash the signboard of the training ground, would they still have the face to continue living? Ning Haixin casually pressed down. How powerful was a first-step heavenly venerable? Under the pressure of her aura, all the celestial kings felt their chests tighten, and then they could no longer move. Roar, Uncle Rabbit is coming. The rabbit ran off at lightning speed. Let's see who can take the signboard first. Who's afraid of who? The old ginseng burrowed into the ground. Ao. The stone man coiled up and turned into a stone ball that rolled forward. Its body was too heavy, and it left a deep mark in the ground, which turned into a small river. Little Qing flew through the sky, also as fast as lightning. The large black dog scratched his neck with his paw. What a bunch of little kids. What's so fun about this? Just a moment ago, his face was filled with disdain, but as soon as he turned around, he immediately broke into a run. Grandpa Dog is first. Schwa, he was a second-step heavenly venerable, so he naturally arrived first even though he had started later. With a leap and a flash, he had already arrived below the training ground. He leaped up high, and with a bite he had already bitten off the signboard. Grandpa Dog is mighty. Grandpa Dog is domineering. Grandpa Dog has big breasts. The rabbit, the old ginseng, and the stone man all shouted. Breasts, your sister has big breasts. Do you know how to talk? The large black dog kicked the stone man, and the stone man rolled back. The old ginseng took the signboard. This was a golden signboard, and the words, "Drenched Mountain Training Ground," were written on it. It was very grand and majestic. Grandpa Ginseng has the signboard. Whoever wants it can come at me, it said in a provocative voice. Although the celestial kings were furious, none of them could move. Under the suppression of the celestial venerable's aura, it would be strange if the celestial kings could still make a move. Not everyone was called Ling Han. The large black dog and the others carried the signboard back, all of them proud and arrogant. It was no wonder that he had been constantly suppressed by the 5 paragons, and the large black dog had even been captured and imprisoned for a very, very long time. As such, he had naturally been suppressing his anger. Ling Han smiled faintly. The signboard is in my hands. I'll be at the plentiful arrival inn for the next few days. If you want to take it, feel free to come. He intentionally hid his identity, so the celestial kings could only hear this voice, but they had no idea who it was. Let's go. Ling Han turned around and led the way. Po Yu wasn't here, so there was no point in continuing to cause trouble. In any case, the signboard had already been torn down. This was equivalent to slapping Po Yu in the face. What kind of lousy dojo is this? There isn't even a single person who can fight. The old ginseng said deliberately. AI, being invincible is really lonely. Brats, come at me if you have the guts. The rock golem had also learned bad things now. Pa! It was immediately kicked in the face by the rabbit. What? It asked naively, confusion and grievance written all over its face. You're the brat. Rabbit stamped its feet. Oh! The rock golem readily accepted. Only then did it realize that it had committed a great taboo of rabbit, and hurriedly corrected itself. You brats! Pa! It was sent flying by the large black dog's kick again. What an idiot, and he really doesn't know how to speak. The old ginseng gloated. In the sky, little Qing flew high with a disdainful expression, ashamed to be associated with them. They were messing around, and it was obvious that they didn't take the Po Yu dojo seriously at all. This caused the celestial king's eyes to spit fire, and they wanted nothing more than to fight to the death. But what could they do? They could only watch as Ling Han and the others left. Everyone, are we just going to sit back and watch? Someone asked. Then what should we do? There's definitely a celestial venerable among them. Even if we all attack together, we'll only be sending ourselves to our deaths. Strange, since they're celestial venerables, how could they not know how powerful Lord Po Yu is? Why do they still dare to act so impudently? How about we go and ask a celestial venerable to act first? If we can snatch back our signboard, we'll be able to gain some face. Humph, do you think a celestial venerable will act just because you ask him? I do know a celestial venerable. If we ask him in Lord Po Yu's name, I believe he'll definitely act. That's true. Although we don't have enough face, Lord Po Yu definitely has enough face. Let's go, let's go. Ling Han and the others walked back. He didn't go and meet up with the women, but instead stopped in a small town nearby. There was an inn here, and it was the plentiful arrival inn that he had mentioned. The group of them checked into the inn. Most of them were foodies, and they ordered some good wine and food and began to eat. When do you guys think Po Yu will come? The old ginseng asked as he drank. However, he wasn't drinking with his mouth. Instead, he extended a few of his ginseng roots into the wine jar, and used his roots to absorb the wine. He probably can't take this lying down, and will come very soon, the large black dog deduced. Not necessarily. Ding Ping shook his head. Those people might not report this matter to their superiors. In my opinion, they might want to resolve this problem by themselves. What can a few fart celestial kings do? The old ginseng said disdainfully. It was as if he had forgotten that he, too, was a celestial king. They might be able to ask a celestial venerable to act, Zhu Yao said. Chen Ruijing, Jiang Yefeng, and the others all nodded. Meanwhile, Ling Han yawned in boredom. He was tempering his heart in the mortal world, and he hoped to break through to the 6th step as soon as possible. He didn't mind what these celestial kings would do. In any case, Po Yu would definitely appear in the end. The longer he waited, the more enjoyable it would be when they fought. Perhaps he would be able to break through his shackles and achieve a breakthrough. Everyone drank until they were completely drunk. Ordinary wine naturally wouldn't have this effect, but Ling Han had used Celestial King tier great herbs as ingredients to brew celestial wine. Thus, even celestial kings would be drunk. Only the large black dog and Ning Haixin were exceptions. The large black dog was still drinking unhurriedly, while Ning Haixin was standing behind Ling Han, respectfully serving her master. Her original intentions hadn't changed at all. This had been the case when she had advanced to the severing mundane tier, and it was also the same at the next step. Less than half a day had passed, and a crowd could be seen surging outside the inn. Numerous powerful auras surged, and there was no lack of Celestial King tier level elites. The large black dog immediately stood on his hind legs and howled, "Do you want to fight? Don't be impatient." Ling Han shook his head. Even though this large dog had advanced to the Celestial Venerable tier, he was still impatient. "Master, we want to take you as our master," a voice traveled over from outside. Chapter 30-33. The short old man stared at the inn. Under the heavy pressure, the entire inn shook. The short old man said. His eyes were fixed on the inn. Under the heavy pressure, the entire inn began to tremble. In the end, he still showed mercy. Otherwise, with just a thought, this inn would fall apart. Seeing that Ling Han and the others didn't dare to come out to fight, some immortal kings thought they were scared and knew they weren't Song Yan's match. Thus, they jumped up and shouted, "Hurry up and come out, don't let Lord Song Yan wait too long." "That's Lord Song Yan." The people inside, "Hurry up and come out to greet him." Song Yan put his hands behind his back and sneered. He didn't believe that Ling Han and the others could endure being insulted by a group of immortal kings. But what puzzled him was that no matter how many times those immortal kings called out, no one appeared in the inn. What the hell? Song Yan was very cautious. He was only one step up and didn't have any advantage against the other steps. Thus, he called out from outside, wanting to confirm the identity of his opponent. There were only so many heavenly venerables in the world. Other than a few who were extremely low-key, he knew all of them, or at least had seen them before. But the other party didn't show up for a long time, which naturally made Song Yan suspicious. Could it be that the other party wasn't a heavenly venerable but a quasi-heavenly venerable? Was that why he didn't dare to come out? Very likely, then the other party should be planning to escape now. Of course, Song Yan was still a little puzzled. If these people were quasi-heavenly venerables, why would they have the guts to cause trouble at the mountain-crushing Dao field? Could it be that, in order to become famous, they were stupid enough to stroke the whiskers of a 7-step supreme? It was because of this puzzlement that he didn't dare to act. Being able to become a heavenly venerable, how could he not have patience? But after waiting for half a day, he finally couldn't bear it anymore. He couldn't keep going like this, right? He looked at one of the immortal kings and said, "You, go in and take a look." But that immortal king couldn't help but shiver in fear. What did it have to do with a mortal like him? "You're not going?" Song Yan said indifferently. Although his voice wasn't sharp at all, it exuded a terrifying chill. That immortal king didn't dare to say anything and hurriedly walked towards the inn. It wasn't like Song Yan hadn't killed anyone before. He didn't want to be slapped to death immediately. In the beginning, he was still walking with large strides, but as he walked, his speed slowed down, and he seemed hesitant. He wanted to stop, but Emperor Song Yan's cold snort came from behind him, so he could only continue walking and enter the inn. But there was no more movement from him. Emperor Song Yan frowned. Why wasn't there any reaction? What the hell? "You go in." He pointed at another celestial king. That immortal king wanted to cry. Earlier, when the other immortal king entered, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no more commotion. If he entered now, it would be hard to tell whether he would survive or not. He wanted to shake his head, but when he saw Emperor Song Yan's cold and expressionless face, How could he dare to say a single word? He could only continue walking forward. Step by step he slowly entered the inn. After that, there was no more movement. What the hell is going on in there? Emperor Song Yen was deep in thought, while the other immortal kings quietly walked backwards, wanting to leave. Before this Emperor says anything, whoever dares to leave will bear the consequences. Emperor Song Yen said coldly, instantly causing those who had just lifted their feet to put them down again. Who dared to ignore the threat of a Emperor? You and you. Emperor Song Yen named 4 people in one breath. Go together. Those 4 people were helpless, and could only brace themselves and walk towards the inn. After they entered the inn's entrance, it was as if they had entered a bottomless pit. There was no more movement. There was no sound, no fighting, and even no aura. It was as if they had evaporated from the world. Emperor Song Yen stared fixedly at the inn. Could this be a dragon's pool or a tiger's den? Go together. He waved his hand. Although the immortal kings were unwilling, under the despotic power of an Emperor, they could only obey. They stepped forward, either through the door or through the window, and entered the inn. Then, just like before, there was no more movement. The surroundings were quiet. It was clearly a sunny day, but there was a feeling like they had entered a ghost cave. Emperor Song Yen frowned deeply. What in the world was going on? It was too strange. He really somewhat regretted agreeing to take this trip. Was it so easy to form a relationship with these 7 steps? He sighed in his heart, already making up his mind. Go. He strode forward. Boom, his essence, chi, and spirit rose to the peak in an instant. He had already made preparations for a great battle. Xiao, a black shadow flew out from the inn. Emperor Song Yen raised his head to look, and instantly revealed a look of surprise. Because this was a wine cup. A wine cup? What? Smashing the cup as a signal, wanting to swarm forward and attack him. Emperor Song Yen had yet to finish his thought when he saw that the wine cup had already landed on his head. He snorted coldly and was about to smash the wine cup with a punch. A terrifying power was released from the wine cup, as if an ancient star was pressing down together. Emperor Song Yen instantly felt a weight on his back, and he involuntarily lowered his back. Then, his legs could not withstand the power of the ancient firmament. He knelt down. He was both shocked and furious. A dignified Emperor actually knelt down on the streets. How could this be endured? But he was even more terrified. The person inside did not even show themselves. He was suppressed just by throwing out the wine cup. What kind of strength was this? The wine cup landed, just happening to land on top of his head, standing steadily. Emperor Song Yen had no way of standing up. This wine cup was incomparably heavy. Even if he possessed the unique power of a plane, he was also unable to resist it. He could only kneel just like that, unable to fall down or stand up. The difference in strength was as great as the heavens. He sighed in his heart. He was doomed this time. Who asked him to run over muddle-headedly without figuring anything out? Fortunately, the other party only made him kneel down and did not kill him. Otherwise, he would definitely have died already. Right at this time, a large number of celestial kings walked out from the inn, their faces all at a loss. When they entered the inn, they stepped into a dark and boundless space. No matter how they walked, they could not find the exit. Until just now, they suddenly saw a ray of light, then walked towards the light, and walked out inexplicably. But at the same time, they all drew in a cold breath. What was going on? Emperor Song Yen actually knelt at the entrance of the inn. The guy who was still arrogant and shameless just now, acting like the #1 expert in the world, actually knelt down just like that now. Inconceivable. They were all dumbstruck. They had clearly entered an inn, yet they did not notice the space change at all. Moreover, an Emperor even knelt down. It was sufficient to prove how powerful the person in this inn was. Chapter 30-34. My lord is mighty. Immediately, some immortal kings knelt down and shouted towards the inn. My lord, we were forced to do this. Some of the immortal kings explained. As for those immortal kings who insulted earlier, they were all trembling in fear. Who would have thought that Ling Han and the others didn't even bother with Emperor Song Yen? It wasn't that they weren't a match for Emperor Song Yen, it was because they couldn't be bothered to deal with him. Look, Emperor Azure Flame definitely wanted to make a move, but in the end, he couldn't even enter the inn's door and directly knelt down. Of course, no matter how wretched Emperor Song Yen was, he was also not someone they could point fingers at. Scram! Don't let Lord Dog see you again. A flamboyant voice rang out from the inn. Xiao, the wine cup on Emperor Song Yan's head was immediately taken back. Emperor Song Yen stood up and bowed in the direction of the inn before turning around and leaving. He naturally didn't have the face to stay any longer, and he had to thank the other party for sparing his life. How would he dare to think about revenge? The large black dog was extremely smug. He had borrowed Ling Han's might to do this. Although it was second step and its strength was far above Emperor Song Yan's, suppressing the other party with a wine cup was something impossible. This was something that only Ling Han could do. Exalted Master! The immortal kings knelt down again, their expressions fanatical. If he could become the disciple of such an Emperor, his future would be limitless. In the inn, Master's judgment is still accurate. That old fellow Poyu really didn't appear, Ding Ping said. Stop flattering me. Are you saying that Grandpa Dog's judgment isn't accurate? The large black dog said in annoyance. He kicked Ding Ping to the side. Next, Poyu should appear, right? Ling Han shook his head. Not necessarily. Not yet. The large black dog widened his eyes. How long will Poyu's old face be torn apart? Ling Han said with a smile, Poyu probably doesn't know about this matter yet. Moreover, the one who returned in low spirits this time is only a first step. Therefore, a third step or fourth step expert might appear next. After that, Poyu should have received the news. AI, then if Grandpa Dog wants to watch a good show, you'll have to wait a little longer. A disappointed expression appeared on the large black dog's face. Even if Poyu comes now, you can't just watch from the sidelines, Ling Han said. When a battle of 7 steps started, the shockwaves could kill a 6-step cultivator. Thus, no one could watch from the side. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, time quietly passed. After about 3 months, as Ling Han had expected, another celestial venerable arrived. However, it wasn't Poyu, but rather a third-step celestial venerable. Damn, you really guessed it? The large black dog was extremely displeased. Previously, he hadn't refuted Ling Han, yet in his heart, he was actually looking forward to the arrival of defeating Mountain. In the end, I am 3 arrows. Which fellow Taoist is this? This 3 arrows was extremely courteous, and he bowed towards the inn. Unfortunately, Ling Han only wanted to drink a little. Without Ling Han's order, Ning Haixin and the others wouldn't respond. The large black dog was extremely displeased, so he naturally couldn't be bothered to reply. Emperor 3 Arrows waited for a while. Seeing that no one responded, he could not help revealing a look of displeasure. He was a 3-step celestial, and could already be ranked in the middle among the celestial venerables. However, the other party wasn't even willing to respond to him. This was too ostentatious, wasn't it? Fellow Taoist, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive, he said again. Because he didn't know the strength of Ling Han and the others, he still maintained his politeness and focused on resolving the conflict. You should know that Lord Poyu is a 7th-step celestial. That's the most powerful force in this world, and he's invincible. What? Poyu was a 7th-step celestial? Hearing this, the celestial kings kneeling on the ground nearby all trembled in fear. It was over. They were actually still worshipping Ling Han. Wasn't this openly making an enemy of a 7th-step celestial? Emperor 3 Arrows paused. Seeing that there was still no response from the inn, he could only continue. Now, Lord Poyu still hasn't received any news. Thus, if fellow Taoist returns the signboard and compensates with some gifts, this matter can be resolved peacefully. He paused and waited for a response from the inn. However, there was still no response. Emperor 3 Arrows became even more displeased. He had already said this much, but why didn't he receive any response? He was a 3rd-step Emperor. Empyrean 3 arrows took a step forward. Boom. His aura surged. He was going to resort to peaceful means before resorting to force. Since persuasion was ineffective, he could only resort to force. In the inn, Ling Han turned to Ning Haixin and said, "Haixin, ask him to leave." "Yes, Master," Ning Haixin replied respectfully. "Master, junior sister Ning is only a first-step celestial. She probably isn't a match for that person," Ding Ping hurriedly said. "That's right. It's better if you do it yourself," the large black dog said. "A first-step celestial against a third-step celestial? That would be completely suicidal." Ning Haixin wasn't Ling Han, and her ability to battle against those at the same cultivation level could only be considered average. Ling Han smiled and said, "It's fine." Ning Haixin's figure moved, and she had already appeared outside the inn. Empyrean 3 arrows immediately stopped in his tracks. He was filled with wariness toward Ling Han and his group. However, when he swept his gaze over them, he discovered that Ning Haixin was only a first-step celestial. He instantly cursed himself in his mind. Why was he making such a big fuss about nothing? "Your Majesty, please leave," Ning Haixin said, neither haughty nor humble. Empyrean 3 arrows immediately wanted to fly into a rage. She wanted to send him away with just a small step celestial? However, when he looked at Ning Haixin, his anger slowly dissipated. "That's not appropriate, right? I've also come at the request of someone else," Empyrean 3 arrows said. His tone didn't indicate that he was refusing at all. Rather, he felt that this was a difficult task. "Then I'll also ask you to leave now," Ning Haixin said calmly. Empyrean 3 arrows hesitated. Logically speaking, he shouldn't leave just like this. After all, he had come at the request of someone else, and he had even received some benefits. However, the words of this woman in front of him moved his heart greatly, and he unconsciously wanted to obey her. In his heart, there was a voice telling him not to obey, but he couldn't do it. "All right." He nodded, and very happily turned around and left. Fuck, it settled just like that? In the inn, everyone was so shocked that their scalps went numb. Ling Han was very awesome. He could battle those 2 tiers above him, and he could be called a war god. As for Ning Haixin, her battle prowess could only be considered average, yet she could make those 2 tiers above her obey her orders. She could subdue the enemy without fighting. This wasn't inferior to Ling Han in the slightest. "I say, little Han, this disciple of yours is quite powerful." The large black dog's eyes widened, and he still hadn't come back to his senses. She's almost catching up to Grandpa Dog." He was flattering himself. Ling Han smiled faintly. Even now, he still hadn't figured out where Ning Haixin's affinity came from and how she could influence others. However, after many years of research, he had still managed to make Ning Haixin activate this ability of her own accord. She was slightly similar to Ling Han in that he could battle those 2 tiers above him in the Heaven Venerable tier, while Ning Haixin could influence Heaven Venerable's 2 tiers above her at most. Those who had that speck of light in their minds seemed to be incredibly powerful. Chapter 30-35. Using this as a reference, he might be able to discover more people with light spots. The problem was, Ning Haixin was extremely ordinary at the beginning. If not for Ling Han's appearance, perhaps she would have died of depression long ago, and how would she have the chance to advance into the Celestial Venerable tier? And in the Celestial King tier and Ascending Origin tier, it was actually not too rare to be able to battle across 2 tiers. Many prodigies could do this. They could only choose among the Celestial Venerables, but at present, there was only him, and Feng Wuding. Feng Wuding was also like this. Unfortunately, he was already dead, and his spirit was shattered. Even if he dug out his grave, it would be useless. Ling Han felt that it was a pity. If he could obtain more life codes, his strength would definitely improve further. Because the strength of a plane, while its level was important, it also depended on the lives on it. Why did the dimensional war have to first destroy the living beings on a certain plane? This was the reason. Forget it, he'd think of a way later. Ling Han thought that perhaps when he advanced to the 6th or 7th step, his divine sense would become even more powerful. With a single sweep, he would be able to encompass all the living beings in the entire plane and easily sweep through one round. Next, old thief Piyu should come personally, right? Ling Han sent Ning Haixin, the large black dog, and the others away, and waited for Celestial Venerable Piyu's arrival alone. This time, he was going to have a good fight with Piyu. With the explosion of his sixth-rate symbols, he could suppress the other for at least 2 hours. Although it was very short, and he couldn't kill the other, it was still a very satisfying thing. He would collect some interest first. One day, he would completely suppress those 5 old thieves. This period of time was quite long. After a whole 30 years, a powerful aura finally arrived. Pung! The entire inn instantly exploded, turning into ashes. Even if Ling Han had already moved, he couldn't stop it. The power of 7 steps was too strong. Thankfully, the people in the inn had already been driven out by Ling Han, so there were no innocent casualties. Ling Han stood proudly in the sky and calmly said, "Old thief Piyu, I've waited a long time for you. It really is you, Junior." Heavenly Sovereign Sundermount also stood in the sky, exuding a domineering aura that caused even the heavens to lower their heads. As he looked at Ling Han, his heart was actually filled with emotions. This young man had only cultivated for a few years, yet he was about to be on equal footing with him. This filled him with jealousy. "You dare to cause trouble in this sovereign's Dao ground? It looks like you're tired of living." Ling Han smiled faintly. "Why aren't the 5 of you serving in the foreign battlefields? What are you doing here? What does it have to do with you?" Celestial Lord Sundermount retorted. He did not attack because he knew that without Frenzy's help, he would not be able to do anything to Ling Han's defense. How could an existence like him do something useless? "There's no harm in saying it," Ling Han said. "Are you afraid?" "What a joke. Trying to goad me into action? You really are naive." Empyrean Sundermount sneered. Ling Han looked at Empyrean Sundermount and pondered for a moment before saying, "When the Yuan world was destroyed back then, it was clearly a mysterious power that sealed those life imprints into your bodies. Why do you want to hide this matter?" Empyrean Sundermount's expression clearly changed. His eyes flashed with a blazing brilliance. "How did you know? Tell me what I want to know, and I'll tell you what you want to know." Ling Han smiled. Empyrean Sundermount pondered for a moment, but then he sneered. "Since you don't know the situation, then there's nothing I need to know. So what if you know some minor details?" "It doesn't matter." Ling Han was surprised. Where did this old thief get his confidence from? "Fine, since you don't want to say it, then let's fight." "Old thief, I've tolerated you for a long time. This time, I'm here to beat you up." Ling Han suddenly attacked. Empyrean Sundermount flicked his sleeves. "I don't have time to waste with you." However, just as he wanted to tear open space and leave, he discovered that something was wrong. He had only torn open space, but now he had entered the void. Of course, this was Ling Han's doing. If he hadn't sent his opponent into the void, then once the battle started, the damage they would have caused would have been too terrifying. It would have caused massive damage to the Xuanma Plain. Although Ling Han hadn't gone to the Outer Realm battlefield, he wouldn't drag the Yuan world down. "Little brat, scram." Empyrean Sundermount wanted to charge out of the void. There was no point in fighting with Ling Han. "I said I was going to beat you up. How can I go back on my word?" Ling Han laughed. His sixth-rate runes revolved, and planar energy surged. With a roar, he attacked Empyrean Sundermount. Heavenly Venerable Puyu couldn't even be bothered to parry this attack. He wanted to escape even if he had to endure Ling Han's attack. However, after being struck by Ling Han's attack, he was instantly sent flying. It was unknown how far he had been sent flying through the air. Ling Han caught up to him, spread his hands, and then clapped them together. Boundless power condensed, turning into substance. 2 large hands appeared, one on the left and one on the right, and they ruthlessly slapped at Empyrean Sundermount. Bang! The void shook, and Empyrean Sundermount was slapped into a piece of paper. The power of a peak 7th step expert was amplified by 3,000 times. That was just too terrifying. But being an undying 7th step expert wasn't just for show. Empyrean Sundermount's figure flickered, and he returned to his original state. But the old man's expression had completely changed. His hair was standing on end, and his eyes were spitting fire. A seven-step supremacy was high and aloof, and only he had the right to decide the life and death of others. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Ling Han laughed. Old thief, it doesn't matter if it feels good or not. I've prepared many big moves for you. Little brat, you're courting death. Empyrean Sundermount's eyebrows twitched, and he finally charged at Ling Han. So what if it was useless? He was going to beat this bastard. Bang. Ling Han's right fist pierced straight through, forcibly shaking off his arms, and then ruthlessly smashed into Empyrean Sundermount's face. Then, Empyrean Sundermount was sent flying again, shooting off into the distance at incredible speed. In terms of power, Empyrean Sundermount was inferior to Ling Han, and the difference was not small. Old thief, where do you think you're going? Ling Han took a large stride forward, his fists raining down on heavenly venerable Sunder Mountain like a torrential storm. Although Empyrean Sundermount tried his best to fight back, the difference in power was just too great, even if he used the first-rank combination talisman. Bang bang bang. He could only be beaten up. His physique wasn't bad, and no matter how much he was beaten, it was impossible to injure him. Even if the power was too terrifying, to the point where his body was deformed, he would definitely recover in the next instant. But Ling Han had no intention of stopping. Instead, he was getting more and more excited. Beating a seven-step supremacy, and a peak seven-step one at that, could only be described with one word: awesome. Damn it. Old bastard, you want to kill me? Bang! A punch landed on the left side of Empyrean Sundermount's face. What? So what if you're a seven-step? Bang! Another punch landed on the right side of Empyrean Sundermount's face. I'll beat you into submission, old ghost. Bang! Another kick landed on Empyrean Sundermount's balls. Chapter 30-37. A good story. Ling Han didn't believe that Empyrean Sunderpeak could suddenly comprehend the method to create planes. This wasn't something that could be done with just good comprehension. It had to rely on the heavens. For example, if Ling Han didn't have that mysterious dot of light in his body and coincidentally met Ning Haixin, the two of their dots of light resonating, he wouldn't have been able to decipher the life code. What did Empyrean Sunderpeak rely on? Moreover, these 5 old bastards all had explosive comprehension and comprehended the method to create planes. How was this possible? Therefore, the most reasonable guess was that these 5 old bastards had used some sort of method to divide the planes on Feng Wuding's body. That was 100 planes. If 5 people divided them, each person would have 20 planes. Perhaps there had been some losses, so there were only 6. Perhaps there had been a great internal battle, and Empyrean Sunderpeak had only managed to snatch 6. Perhaps, for the time being, he only had 6 planes that he could use to fight. Old bastards, what on earth are you guys plotting? Ling Han threw another punch. Haha. Although Empyrean Sunderpeak had taken a punch, he still laughed. Boy, with your short-sightedness, you don't know the limits of heaven and earth. You are fated to die with the light and disappear from this starry sky. Old bastard, you seem to know quite a few secrets. Ling Han narrowed his eyes. Don't try to trick me. That's just wishful thinking, Empyrean Sunderpeak said coldly, no longer dwelling on this topic. Although Ling Han had repeatedly probed, Empyrean Sunderpeak had lived for so many years. How could he be tricked? Everything depended on Ling Han's own speculation, and then he would judge based on Empyrean Sunderpeak's expression. Although he didn't get anything substantial out of Empyrean Sunderpeak, that wasn't Ling Han's focus. This time, he had come to beat Empyrean Sunderpeak. As long as he was happy. Peng, peng, peng. During these 2 hours, Ling Han beat up Empyrean Sunderpeak, venting out all the anger that had accumulated for who knew how many years. After 2 hours, Ling Han finally stopped. He waved his hand and said, "Old fool, that's all for today. We'll continue next time." You still want to do it next time? Empyrean Sundermount roared furiously, revolving all of his strength as he charged over. Ling Han once again lit up all of his 7-stream talismans, and the increase in his strength once again reached a terrifying 2,000 times. Ping, 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 he clashed with Mountain Breaker. He still had the upper hand in terms of strength, though he was not as dominating as before. Given Empyrean Sundermount's undying body, he was unable to suppress him. It could only be said that Ling Han had a slight upper hand. Old thief, there's no need to send me off. I'll come back next time. Ling Han punched out, sending Mountain's Breaker flying before turning to leave. Brat! Empyrean Sundermount quickly came to a halt and charged towards Ling Han. He was furious. In this world, there was no one who could beat him up and still live. Ling Han laughed heartily. In just a few steps, he had already arrived at the rift in the void. He took a step forward, and when Heavenly Venerable Sundermountain lunged at him, he sent him flying with a punch. He flattened the void. This time, Heavenly Venerable Sundermountain would have to spend some time to find the exit. He casually left. Empyrean Sundermount could not possibly follow behind him. Ling Han met up with the others. After learning that he had beaten up Empyrean Sundermount, they all cheered loudly. Next, should we go find Chong Yen and the others? The large black dog asked excitedly. Howl, let's go tear down their signboard again, the old ginseng said excitedly. Looking at him now, he did not look like a celestial medicine at all. Ling Han thought for a moment and then said, No, let's not go to Chong Yen for now. I want to stay and continue beating up Sundermount. I want to beat him until he is traumatized. Everyone looked at each other. They all felt that Ling Han was a bit naughty. How could you target just one person? Weren't you afraid of beating Empyrean Sundermount until he started to doubt his life? Indeed, after those sixth-rate symbols were fully charged, Ling Han went out to find Empyrean Sundermount. The old turtle was cultivating in seclusion near the Dao Plaza. Thus, Ling Han pushed through mountains and seas, and very quickly forced Empyrean Sundermount out. He dragged him into the void and gave him a beating. It was only for 2 hours, and Ling Han did not go too far. Then he floated away. It was impossible for Empyrean Sundermount to stop him from leaving. Back and forth, Ling Han went to find Empyrean Sundermount a total of 7 times, and he also beat him up 7 times. This really traumatized Empyrean Sundermount, and he began to doubt his life. Of course, he could also run far away. The world was so big, and there was a limit to how far a 7-step cultivator could go. However, he could not lose face. A mighty 7-step cultivator could only cause others to flee upon hearing his name. How could he be afraid? Because he wanted face so much, he could not avoid being beaten up by Ling Han time and time again. The 8th time, Ling Han appeared. He looked at Empyrean Sundermount, who was glaring at him angrily, and couldn't help but chuckle. Old thief, have you gained pleasure from being beaten up by me? You actually did not run away, and instead stayed here to wait for me. I never would have thought that you were actually such an old thief. Little thief, don't you dare be so arrogant. Empyrean Sundermount roared. When I push my planar power to a super high level, I will make you bleed for 5 steps. Ling Han sneered. Dream on. Don't think that just because you obtained a few planes from Feng Wooding, you will feel that you have broken through to a super high level plane. You really have some wishful thinking. Forget it, I can't be bothered to beat up a freak like you. Today is the last time, lest you disgust me. Empyrean Sundermount was furious. He was clearly the one getting beaten up, so why did he become a freak and a disgusting existence? This brat's mouth was really poisonous. He roared and erupted with all his strength, wanting to turn defeat into victory. However, this was destined to be for naught. He was quickly suppressed by Ling Han and could only take a beating. After Ling Han beat Empyrean Sundermount up, he said, Old thief, don't look forward to the next time. I won't be coming again. Look forward to your head. Empyrean Sundermount cursed in his heart, but he also felt a faint sense of relief. Fuck, he finally wouldn't have to take a beating in the future. Even if his physique was invincible and indestructible, he still needed his face and skin. Brat, just you wait. I will remember this enmity, and I will definitely repay you. He gritted his teeth. He definitely had to show his attitude, or even he would feel apologetic. Next time, it won't be so easy, Ling Han said indifferently. After beating Empyrean Sundermount up a few times, he was in a great mood, and it seemed as if the barrier between realms had slightly loosened. Perhaps, after beating up these 5 old thieves, he would be able to advance to the 6th step. At that time, he would be able to push his plane to a higher level, and his strength would explode by who knew how many times. The 7th step? Was still just trash. Old thief, you still have a few days to live. Enjoy your remaining time of freedom, because you will only be my prisoner from now on. Ling Han turned and left, leaving Empyrean Sundermount with a slender back view. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 3038. The heavenly venerable Sundermount looked at Ling Han's gradually disappearing figure, his heart filled with complicated feelings. A mere 5th step could actually make him lose his temper. Then what would happen when Ling Han reached the 6th step? Or even the 7th step? He shook his head, forcing himself to recover from this kind of dejection. He was a 7th step, an existence that couldn't be killed even if his origin world collapsed, so how could he be so pessimistic? As long as he could extrapolate the plane to the limit, he would definitely be able to possess even greater strength. At that time, he would definitely be able to kill Ling Han. Definitely. Ling Han returned to meet with the Empress and the others, and then decided to leave. He couldn't always target Sundermount. That wouldn't be fair. Rain and dew should be evenly distributed, right? The group set out, heading towards the blazing dojo. This distance was very far, but Ling Han hurried at full speed, and in a mere dozen or so days, they arrived in the vicinity of the blazing dojo. This was a large city, and the blazing dojo was several tens of thousands of miles outside the city. For celestial kings, they wouldn't need to walk for long, so it was naturally very close. They rested for a while, and Ling Han put them all into the celestial visitor residence, and then set out. This time, he couldn't be bothered to play slowly anymore. In a few steps, he appeared at the foot of the mountain of the blazing dojo. He walked up the mountain, calm and composed. The blazing dojo didn't have any restricted areas, and anyone could come, but there were basically not many that could reach the peak of the dojo. Because there were restrictions set up by Chong Yen here, it was impossible to reach the peak without powerful ability to challenge those at a higher cultivation level. Ling Han deliberately suppressed his cultivation level and experienced this kind of suppression. However, the main test of the restrictions set up by Chong Yen was celestial kings, and couldn't possibly be too powerful. Thus, even if Ling Han suppressed his cultivation level, his physique had been tempered by the 4 essential powers, and he also had endless power of the dimensional plane, which was too powerful. He clasped his hands behind his back and walked step by step towards the peak of the mountain. This person is so pretentious, and he even has his hands crossed. Ho ho, he'll be struck by lightning if he's being pretentious. It won't be long before this guy will definitely crawl like a dog. I'll bet with you that this guy won't even be able to crawl. He'll probably just lie on the ground. The people on the road were all talking about it. As long as one could successfully walk to the top of the mountain, they would be able to obtain a keepsake that would allow them to be free from the suppression and allow them to come and go as they pleased. Therefore, apart from those who wanted to join the dojo, everyone else was at ease. Who's that? What a grand display! On the mountain road, many people looked towards the foot of the mountain and saw a super luxurious carriage speeding towards them. How luxurious! The legs pulling the carriage were actually 9 true dragons, 9th heaven's celestial kings. Hiss, could it be that a celestial venerable had come? Otherwise, how could he have the qualifications to have 9 true dragons of the 9th heaven pull his carriage? It wasn't just the strength of the legs, the carriage itself was incomparably luxurious as well. It was entirely constructed from immortal gold, and there were natural streaks of patterns on its surface. Great Yin and Great Yang energy were gathering the essence of the 5 elements. It was simply a cultivation holy land. It had evolved from the laws and was incomparably magnificent. The carriage soon arrived at the foot of the mountain and stopped. A woman as beautiful as a goddess walked out of the carriage. There were 9 beams of light swirling around her body. Clearly, She was a ninth firmament immortal king. Was this the owner of the carriage? But what surprised everyone was that she walked to the other side of the carriage, respectfully opened the door, and said, "Young master, we've arrived." Young master? Hiss, this woman was actually a maid. Everyone was shocked. 9 ninth heaven true dragons were pulling the carriage, and a ninth heaven beauty was a maid. What was the background of this young master? Under everyone's gaze, they saw a man in fluttering white clothes walk out of the carriage. His hair was black and thick, tied up with a jade crown. His face was as beautiful as jade, sparkling and translucent. Everyone was surprised because this young man only had 7 beams of light swirling around him. 7th heaven celestial king. That wasn't right. No matter how strong a 7th heaven was, he shouldn't be able to make 10 ninth heaven experts willingly serve him, right? He's Yen Wuyue. Yen Wuyue? Who's Yen Wuyue? Could it be that supreme genius of the Yen family? That's right. Hey, who are you talking about? You're really ignorant. You don't even know Yen Wuyue? Don't you know the Yen family's 3 celestial venerables? Hiss, it's that Yen family. That's right. This Yen Wuyue is the most outstanding descendant of the Yen family. It's said that he has the potential to surpass his father. In the future, he might reach the 3rd or even the 4th step, surpassing his father, uncle, and grandfather. No wonder. Such a person naturally has 9th heaven immortal kings willing to follow him. If he's lucky, he might be able to become a celestial venerable. On the mountain path, many immortal kings were filled with emotion. Although they had also passed the test and joined the Surging Flame training ground, when it came to becoming a celestial venerable, perhaps 1 or 2 among them could succeed. But for people like Yen Wuyue, who was almost destined to become a great figure in the future, his life was so good that it made people jealous. Yen Wuyue had a faint smile on his face, and he looked very amiable and approachable. However, his eyes were extremely arrogant, as if he was looking down from above. In his opinion, the people here were all trash. They didn't even have the qualifications for him to look at them. Yen Wuyue also wants to join the Surging Flame training ground. Didn't they say he would become a celestial venerable? Idiot, even if he will become a celestial venerable, there's still a time limit. Besides, what kind of existence is a celestial venerable? There's no such thing as becoming a celestial venerable for sure. If he can become a disciple of Lord Surging Flame, then it'll be really stable and he can reach even higher limits. As the crowd discussed animatedly, Yen Wuyue went up the mountain. He didn't let the maidservants follow him, and the 9 dragons had already pulled the chariot away. He climbed up the mountain step by step as if he were taking a leisurely stroll. He's really strong. Under such pressure, he didn't even show the slightest bit of strain. He's a genius. I have to admit defeat. There's another person up there. He's obviously showing off. Compared to Yen Wuyue, it's obvious who's better. Everyone sighed with emotion. Naturally, they thought that Ling Han's relaxed expression was completely fake. However, Yen Wuyue knew in his heart how much pressure he was under. Unfortunately, he cared too much about his reputation, so he deliberately didn't use his full strength to show the illusion that he was doing it with ease. Naturally, he had to suffer in silence. He sped up. If he continued to be so leisurely, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it to the top of the mountain. That would really be a huge joke. Yen Wuyue walked faster and faster, and very soon he caught up with Ling Han. His gaze turned cold. He had come here to become a disciple, and there was actually someone who dared to block his way? Get lost. He brazenly made a move, sweeping toward Ling Han, intending to slap Ling Han down the mountain. Ling Han smiled faintly, and also retaliated with a palm. Ping! Yen Wuyue immediately turned into a rolling gourd, rolling all the way down from halfway up the mountain. After who knew how many somersaults, he finally stopped at the foot of the mountain, his limbs spread out, forming the Chinese character. Everyone, 8. Chapter 3039. Who would have thought that Yen Wuyue, who had just been shrouded in a bright halo and looked like a proud son of heaven, would actually roll down the mountain in the blink of an eye? What was going on? Everyone looked at Yen Wuyue and then at Ling Han. Their eyes moved back and forth and finally, they all stopped on Ling Han. This guy was too fierce. Who said he was pretending just now? This was called being pretentious? This was called strength. He was not pretending at all and it was just so easy. Look, with a casual palm, Yen Wuyue was swept down the mountain. It was ridiculous. Previously, Yen Wuyue had taken the initiative, and now he was swept down the mountain. He only deserved it. Someone laughed out loud. This is the most talented son of heaven of the Yen family? Well, he is the most arrogant. I can't learn such a posture. These people all had great backgrounds, and they were not afraid of the Yen family's backing. Who asked Yen Wuyue to be so flashy just now? With such a big show, these descendants of celestial masters were overshadowed. Now, it would be strange if they did not take advantage of him. Young master. The maid of the ninth heaven hurried to help Yen Wuyue. Get lost. Yen Wuyue climbed up by himself and waved his arm vigorously, indicating that he did not need anyone to help him. Young master, let me kill him. The maid of the ninth heaven looked at Ling Han, her body shining with a murderous aura. Do I still need your help? Yen Wuyue said coldly. Yes, young master. The maid of the ninth heaven quickly retreated to the side. Even if her cultivation was higher than Yen Wuyue's, she did not dare to say anything. Because she was a celestial king cultivated by the Yen family, she did not have any confidence or aggressiveness at all. Yen Wuyue stared at Ling Han. I underestimated you. This meant that although he was swept down the mountain by Ling Han, it was not that his strength was inferior, but that he had underestimated Ling Han's strength. In addition, there was a restriction on the mountain, and the repulsive force was extremely terrible. Therefore, when he was hit by Ling Han, he lost his strength and rolled down the mountain. Furthermore, for the sake of his reputation, he didn't use all of his power. This was also why he was unwilling. This time, I'll make sure your blood splatters everywhere, he said coldly. Ling Han sighed, turned around, and said, I walk my own path, what does it have to do with you? You attacked me and I was only defending myself. Yet you are still so overbearing and even threatened to take my life. Everyone nodded. Ling Han hadn't provoked Yen Wuyue at all. It was all Yen Wuyue's own fault. But now, it was still Yen Wuyue who was unwilling to give up. But Yen Wuyue just snorted coldly. Who asked Ling Han to make a fool of him in public? He said proudly, if you're afraid, then immediately roll down the mountain and kneel in front of me to apologize. Ling Han shook his head. You're thinking too much. I'm just feeling emotional. Then you're dead for sure, Yen Wuyue said sinisterly. Her figure soared up, and she was just about to leave when she was startled. A powerful aura came from afar, and its speed was astonishing. Suddenly, everyone felt a strong palpitation, and even the ninth heaven celestial kings were no exception. They couldn't help but want to kneel. They hurriedly forced themselves to stand. If they really knelt, what face would they have left? In the blink of an eye, they saw a middle-aged man treading the sky. He looked ordinary, but as he stood proudly in the air, he exuded a great aura that could suppress heaven and earth. Greetings, Lord. Immediately, whether it was the celestial kings on the mountain or at the foot of the mountain, they all knelt down. This was a celestial venerable. Yen Wuyue's father, Yen Shu. He really loves his son. He actually personally came to escort him. That person is doomed. Everyone whispered, and the identity of the new middle-aged man was revealed. Yen Shu, Yen Wuyue's father, a second-step celestial venerable. Lord Father. Yen Wuyue hurriedly bowed to his father. Yen Shu nodded. He was extremely satisfied with this son of his. In the future, he would definitely surpass him and become the Yen family's #1 powerhouse. Why haven't you started climbing the mountain? He asked. According to the rules of the Chongyen Dojo, as long as one could climb up the mountain with their own strength, they could become a disciple of the dojo. Yen Wuyue suddenly looked embarrassed and didn't answer immediately. How could he be embarrassed? He had actually been beaten down the mountain like a ball. However, that ninth heavenly layer maid immediately interrupted and said, My lord, young master was ambushed by someone. He was knocked down halfway up the mountain. Yan Shu immediately showed an angry look. How dare he sneak attack his son, the future most outstanding descendant of the Yan clan. I want to see who is so bold as to dare to touch my son, he said in an awe-inspiring tone, just like Yan Wuyue. Those who obey me will live, and those who oppose me will die, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. Lord, that's him. The ninth heaven maid pointed at Ling Han. Where did he come from? Yan Shu's eyes swept over Ling Han, and he immediately spat. He wanted to wipe his eyes to prove that he had seen wrongly, but his legs couldn't move at all. This was because a strong chill enveloped him, and he couldn't move at all. This was that malefic star. Ling Han was definitely the #1 malefic star in the world. As long as they provoked him, no one would have a good ending. Feng Wuding was awesome enough, wasn't he? He was known as the son of destiny of the previous generation's Yuan world, and he had even cultivated to this stage of battle prowess. In the end, he was killed by Ling Han. This stage of battle prowess was the strongest existence in the world. Tell me, wasn't Ling Han the #1 malefic star in the world? But now, his son had actually provoked this malefic star. The entire Yan family might be wiped out. Lord Father? Yan Wuyue was a little puzzled. What was wrong with his father? Why did he look like he had eaten 10,000 flies? This expression was too strange. Slap. Yan Shu suddenly turned around and gave his son a big slap. The slap made Yan Wuyue spin more than a dozen times on the spot. Shwa shwa shwa. Teeth flew out one after another. Seeing his son's face instantly turn into a pig's head, Yan Shu felt a little distressed. But when he thought of how terrifying this malefic star, Ling Han, was, his heart immediately became ruthless. The Yan family couldn't be destroyed because of this bastard of a son. Slap, slap, slap. Yan Shu slapped his son's face 18 times in one go. Everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? Just a moment ago he had been aggressively saying that he would avenge his son, but now he was actually beating his son. Was this malefic? Could a heavenly venerable be malefic? Strange, this was too strange. The ninth heaven maids at the side were also so scared that their faces turned green. They didn't even dare to persuade him. Bastard, do you know who this lord is? Yan Shu said loudly, his tone fierce. What? Everyone's bodies trembled at the same time. What kind of existence was Yan Shu? He was a dignified second-step heavenly venerable, and even he had to address him as Lord. What kind of existence was Ling Han? End of this chapter. Chapter 3041. Everyone was stunned. Even a 7-step supremacy tier had intervened, yet he was still unable to stop Ling Han. Just how strong was this guy? Those who had previously mocked Ling Han wanted nothing more than to dig a hole and bury themselves in it, hoping that Ling Han would never be able to see them again. Otherwise, he would only need to wave his hand casually, and he would be able to blast them into pieces. Ling Han, on the other hand, didn't have any intention of going on a killing spree. He wasn't that petty. It was about time for Chong Yen to appear. Bam! Sure enough, the void was torn apart, and a figure rushed out, emitting boundless rage. It was Chong Yen. His gaze swept over, and he had already discovered that Yan Wuyue had been killed by Ling Han. He couldn't help but become even more enraged, and flames burst forth from his eyes, as if he wanted to incinerate this world. So hot. I'm going to burn. In the surroundings, all the immortal kings were horrified. The power of the 7th step was too powerful. With a single thought, he could cause the highest level of laws to seethe. This was equivalent to the bombardment of countless 9th-stage immortal kings. Which immortal king would be able to withstand it? Instantly, several initial-stage immortal kings were incinerated into ashes. Even more immortal kings were doing their best to defend, but how long could they last? Ling Han roared as he charged at Chong Yen. Peng, his fist once again blasted Chong Yen into the void. As soon as Yen Yi disappeared from this plane, the blazing flames instantly disappeared. This also allowed the remaining immortal kings to heave a sigh of relief. They felt like they had just survived a calamity. They all thought of how Chong Yen had completely disregarded their lives and brazenly started the battle. On the other hand, although Ling Han was the one who provoked them, he had saved them at the most crucial moment. He had sent Chong Yen into the void and saved them from the fate of being turned into ashes by the flames of rules. Should they be grateful to Ling Han? This caused their feelings to be extremely complicated, and for a moment, they didn't know what to think. In the sky, Ling Han and Chong Yen had already begun an intense battle. Bang bang bang. Ling Han didn't unleash his full power. After a few exchanges, he broke free from the void and arrived above the soaring flame training ground. He made a grabbing motion, and the signboard of the soaring flame training ground landed in his hand. At this moment, Chong Yen had already caught up to Ling Han. He struck out with a knife hand strike, intending to hack Ling Han down. Ling Han laughed and said, "Old thief, let me take care of your broken signboard for you. If you want it, come after me." Impudent! Chong Yen was infuriated. Naturally, he didn't even hesitate as he chased after Ling Han. Although the signboard itself wasn't worth much, it represented Chong Tianzuanyan's reputation. If Ling Han were to take it and hang it on the door of a toilet, wouldn't he, Chong Tianzuanyan, go down in history? He wasn't afraid at all. The physique of a seven-step supreme being was invincible. He didn't have to worry about what kind of trap Ling Han would set for him. "Brat, I'm going to tear you to pieces," he roared. His figure was like lightning, and as he passed, the space around him shattered. Fortunately, Ling Han was flying very high, so the shattering of space wasn't likely to hurt him. Furthermore, the plane itself had powerful regenerative abilities, so everything would return to normal very quickly. Ling Han sped along the way, not exchanging blows with Chong Yen at all. After flying for more than 10 days, Chong Yen suddenly felt that something was wrong. Because this was where Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper was. Why did this little thief want to come here? Chong Yen's face was filled with astonishment. Did this brat want to provoke Big Dipper as well? He wanted to remind Big Dipper to immediately attack Ling Han, but they were already at the 7-step Supreme Being level and were hurrying along at full speed. What could possibly be faster than them? Even if Chong Yen let out a long howl, his voice wouldn't be able to catch up to Ling Han's, not even his divine sense. Whoosh whoosh. The two flew like shuttles. Big Dipper Dojo. At least a few hundred celestial kings were sitting cross-legged in the dojo, and a ball of light was floating in the sky. From time to time, it would surge and emit a mysterious aura. These celestial kings were all comprehending it because this was a method set up by Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper. As long as they could comprehend even a little bit, they would benefit endlessly. "Ha, I've broken through," someone laughed loudly. Hong, thunderclouds rolled, and a heavenly tribulation suddenly arrived. The celestial kings didn't dare to be careless. Although as long as they didn't take the initiative to attack, the heavenly tribulation wouldn't harm the innocent. Standing in the center of this storm, naturally, none of them dared to relax. Everyone felt an incomparably powerful suffocating feeling, making them want to lie down on the ground. Hey, when did heavenly tribulation become so powerful? The celestial king who was undergoing the tribulation was dumbfounded. He actually had to undergo such a terrifying heavenly tribulation. He couldn't even stand steadily, so how was he supposed to undergo the tribulation? At this moment, a figure descended. He was dressed in green, and he looked extraordinary. Ling Han made a move, and with a single move, the signboard of Big Dipper Dojo landed in his hands. "Big Dipper Dojo, I've destroyed your signboard. If you want to take it back, come and chase me." He laughed loudly. Just at this moment, the first bolt of heavenly tribulation just happened to descend. Scram! Ling Han punched out. Pung! This bolt of lightning was immediately shattered, and the boundless power of his punch soared into the sky, blasting even the thunderclouds into smithereens. The heavenly tribulation instantly dissipated. Everyone, Wang, another terrifying aura pressed down. Chong Yen had caught up. "Ha, come quickly, come quickly!" Ling Han shouted loudly. His figure moved, and with a single step he had already disappeared into the distance. Xiao, a figure streaked past, but he didn't stop, and also flew into the sky. In just an instant, pung, the mountain exploded, and a figure rushed out, exuding blazing flames of fury as if he wanted to burn the heavens and boil the earth. "Ling Han, you brat!" Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper roared angrily, and immediately leaped up, chasing after Ling Han. Chong Yen slightly slowed down his pace, and waited for Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper to catch up. "Chong Yen, why are you also chasing after this little thief?" Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper asked. Chong Yan's face was somewhat red. He could say that he had chased all the way for more than 10 days, and not only had the sign of his dojo been torn down by Ling Han, but he had also not stopped Ling Han from continuing to tear down Big Dipper's sign. He avoided this topic and said, "This Venerate reckons that this little thief is going to go to Half Moon or Xianyu." Heavenly Venerate Big Dipper frowned. This brat was really audacious. His group had not even gone to find him to settle the score, and he had already come to attract hatred. "Humph, but a mere 5 steps, he said coldly. Boom, the two great supremes used their full strength and wanted to catch up to Ling Han. Even if they could not kill this brat, they wanted to beat him up like a punching bag. With two great supremes joining hands, this was definitely not impossible. They gritted their teeth and chased. This time, they definitely could not give up. If even the sign of their dojo fell into the hands of others, how could they continue living? Shio shio shio. The three great elites shuttled through the sky, causing the sky to change. Mortals only needed to raise their heads, and they would be able to see a hole being torn open in the sky, revealing a pitch-black space. Another 10 or so days later, Ling Han appeared in the land of frost and cold. This was where Heavenly Venerate Half Moon's dojo was located. End of this chapter. Chapter 3042. As expected. Chong Yen and Big Dipper both exclaimed in their hearts. Ling Han had actually come here again. This brat was really audacious. Was he trying to provoke the 5 great supremes in one go? "Two old thieves, go to the side and cool off." Ling Han suddenly turned around and punched. Hong, the void was smashed open by him, and he just happened to rush towards Yen and Big Dipper. He pushed the boat with the current and sent it in. Without waiting for the two supremes to rush out, Ling Han exploded with his full strength and forced them back. He casually sealed the crack in space. This should be able to trap the two supremes for a dozen or so breaths of time, which was enough. Shio, Ling Han's figure shot forward again. After a few steps, he took a step down. Half Moon Training Ground. Half Moon Heavenly Sovereign was not sitting in the training ground. What kind of status did he have? It was already a great kindness for him to occasionally show himself and guide the celestial kings in their cultivation. Ling Han's figure was filled with destructive power, and he brought with him an incredibly powerful shockwave as he landed on the ground. When he landed on the training ground, a shockwave instantly shot out in all directions with him as the center. Ping, 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 the entire training ground was instantly reduced to ruins. The celestial kings inside were sent flying like scarecrows. Not only did they not have any resistance, but their faces were also filled with confusion. What had happened? Ling Han laughed loudly and stretched out his right hand. When he retracted it, there was already a signboard in his hand. Yes, the signboard of Half Moon Training Ground was also in his hands. "Old thief Half Moon, hurry up and come out to greet your grandfather." Ling Han laughed loudly. Hong, a terrifying aura surged out, and Half Moon Heavenly Sovereign appeared. He walked over from afar, one step trampling the heavens, one step suppressing the earth, domineering in the present age. "Brat, you dare to bully this lord? Are you tired of living?" Half Moon Heavenly Sovereign said coldly. Ling Han waved the signboard in his hand and said, "Your face is in my hands. If you want it back, come and chase me." Half Moon Heavenly Sovereign was just about to speak when he was startled. He sensed two incomparably tyrannical auras approaching. They were not weaker than him. 7 steps he focused his gaze and saw that the two great supreme martial artists, Chong Yen and Big Dipper, were already rushing over from afar. "You guys?" he muttered. "Suppress this brat first," Chong Yen said solemnly. "All right." The 3 supreme beings charged towards Ling Han at the same time. Each and every one of them was filled with rage. Ling Han laughed heartily. "Come and chase me. If you succeed, this young master will recognize you as my godson." He turned around and ran at an astonishing speed. This infuriated the three great supreme beings. Which one of their opponents wasn't the most powerful person in the world? None of them didn't respect their status. However, they had never met someone like Ling Han who was still shooting his mouth off. However, they just couldn't catch up to Ling Han, capture him, and blast him into pieces. But he had already torn down his own signboard. How could he tolerate this? Give chase. They chased after Ling Han. This brat had probably gone to look for Xian Yu or Po Yu. After chasing for a while, they were sure that it was Xian Yu. Another dozen or so days later, Ling Han was already close to Heavenly Venerable Xian Yu's Dao Arena. Ling Han shook his head at the words of the three supreme beings. He couldn't possibly send Chong Yen and the others into the void at the same time. Forget it. I'll end this quickly. Xiao, Ling Han's step landed, and he was like a meteor crashing into the ground. He crashed into the ground, and the ground instantly started to shake violently like a carpet. The Dao Arena in front of him instantly collapsed, and celestial kings flew out shakily. Coincidentally, Heavenly Venerable Xian Yu was actually in the Dao Arena. He snorted coldly, and a large hand was already swatting towards Ling Han. Ling Han sighed, and met his opponent's attack head-on. Ping! A terrifying power surged, and the fragments of the buildings that were flying in the sky were instantly blown into pieces. Sigh! Even the signboard was broken. Ling Han shook his head. This was a bit of a pity. He had originally wanted to collect the signboard of the five supreme beings' Dao arenas and hang it outside a toilet in the future. Thinking about it, it would be very eye-catching. Perhaps even celestial kings would specially come to pay their respects. Xiao. The three supreme beings, Chong Yen, Big Dipper, and Half Moon, had already caught up to him. Now, there were 4 seven-step supreme beings, and this lineup was shockingly terrifying. Come and chase me, you grandsons. Ling Han laughed loudly, turned, and started to run. Don't go! Heavenly Venerable Xian Yu attacked, wanting to make Ling Han stay. Unfortunately, this could only be a beautiful fantasy. Ling Han sped away, and the 4 supreme beings were in hot pursuit. This brat is definitely going to Po Yu's place. He really has eaten some heavenly venerable guts. He actually wants to provoke the 5 of us in one go. This time, even if he has the defense of the 7-step supreme beings, we will exhaust his strength bit by bit and suppress him until he dies. The 4 supreme beings were all furious. No one had ever dared to humiliate them like this before. If they couldn't tear Ling Han into 1,000 pieces, they wouldn't be able to show their faces in the future. The 5 supreme beings with the strongest battle prowess continuously shuttled back and forth. Although Ling Han passed by 4 Dao arenas, Chong Yen, Big Dipper, Half Moon, and Xian Yu, on the way back to Po Yu's place, the 5 supreme beings' Dao arenas weren't on the same path. Thus, Ling Han didn't need to travel the total distance of all the Dao arenas to kill his way back to Po Yu's place. In just over 20 days, he was already close to Po Yu's place. Old thief, this young master has returned. Why aren't you coming out to receive me? Ling Han laughed loudly and punched out, smashing the ground. Immediately, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Brat! Po Yu flew out and stood in the sky. You actually dare to come back? Didn't you say that you were going to leave? Why did you come back? Ling Han laughed mischievously. After thinking about it, bullying you is still the most interesting, so I hurried back to see you. Damn it! Heavenly Venerable Po Yu roared angrily. Just as he was about to attack, he saw 4 figures flying over. Because their speed was too fast, under the intense friction, their bodies were all burning with flames. Chong Yen, Big Dipper, Half Moon, and Xian Yu. This Heavenly Venerable Po Yu immediately realized that Ling Han must have gone to visit these 4 old fellows one by one and angered them all. The 5 great paragons stood still one after another, and spread out, surrounding Ling Han in the center. Brat, today, I will definitely suppress you. Heavenly Venerable Half Moon said coldly. The 5 of them could definitely suppress any 7-step supreme beings if they joined forces. This young master doesn't want to waste time with people who only know how to brag. Ling Han tore open the void and stepped in. Chong Yen and the others had chased after Ling Han for so many days. How could they allow him to escape just like that? They all chased into the void, wanting to closely follow Ling Han. No matter where Ling Han went, they would also follow. They were determined to destroy Ling Han. However, unexpectedly, after Ling Han entered the void, he actually didn't leave. Instead, he just stood there proudly. 5 old bastards, let's properly settle this debt. Ling Han cracked his fingers, his killing intent soaring. He had finally gathered the 5 old thieves together. Come, let's have some fun. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.